Hello everyone, welcome to Postcard Buddhism. Today we will talk about the topic 100 Questions on Buddhism, Issues about Buddhism Explained Super Clearly Part 1. On the path of studying Buddhism, Buddhists often encounter doubts and questions that they cannot resolve on their own. Some of these doubts are purely related to scriptures and heavy on academic research. In addition, there are also doubts closely related to daily life activities that any Buddhist might encounter while practicing. 1. Which Buddhist scriptures are suitable for beginners? Question: I am new to Buddhism and wish to learn more about Buddhist teachings. However, I'm unsure which scriptures to start with that would be appropriate for my beginner level and easy to understand. Can you recommend any? Answer: Dear friend, your question shows that you have a sincere and eager desire to study the teachings of Buddhism, which is highly commendable and encouraging. There are numerous Buddhist scriptures available, as Buddhism has an extensive canon of texts in Chinese. As of 2007, we are proud to say that Vietnamese Buddhist monks have completed the translation of the entire Buddhist canon from Chinese to Vietnamese. This is a significant achievement for Vietnamese Buddhism, as it means we now have a complete Buddhist canon in Vietnamese. Although the translation is complete, printing the entire canon will take several more years and depends entirely on financial contributions from Buddhists. According to the Translation Council in Vietnam, the speed of printing depends on these financial contributions. If Buddhists contribute actively, the printing process will be completed sooner. However, even with the Buddhist canon available in Vietnamese, it is not easy for beginners to study due to the vast number of scriptures, laws, and treatises, resembling a dense forest where one might get lost. It is challenging for beginners to know where to start. Therefore, if you want to study systematically from basic to advanced levels, I would recommend starting with the Phut Huk Pho Thon, Basic Buddhism Studies series. This series, compiled by the late Venerable Thiek Thiet Hoa, consists of 12 volumes, presenting Buddhist teachings in a step-by-step manner. The books cover the 5 vehicles of Buddhism, with each vehicle explained through detailed lessons. The series is well organized, clear, and serves as an excellent educational resource, making it easier for beginners to understand without having to search through various other texts. Every Buddhist should consider this series as essential reading. While the series is called Basic Buddhism Studies, it is by no means insignificant. The volumes on the human vehicle and the heavenly vehicle are relatively easy to understand. However, from the Shravakayana, disciples' vehicle, to the Bodhisattvayana, bodhisattva's vehicle, the texts become more complex and difficult to grasp without direct instruction from a knowledgeable teacher. Therefore, I sincerely advise you to study at a temple with teachers who have a solid foundation in Buddhist studies. Alternatively, you can enroll in Buddhist courses offered by temples to build a basic understanding, which will then make it easier to read other Buddhist scriptures and treatises. This is my honest advice. I hope you find it helpful. Wishing you steady progress on your path to studying Buddhist teachings. To the issue of killing living beings. Question: While discussing the first precept of not killing with a friend, I argued that the lives of humans and animals, even tiny creatures like worms or grasshoppers, are equally valuable and should be protected and respected. Killing them is also considered killing, just like killing a human. Conversely, saving their lives is equivalent to saving human lives because all beings have an equal inherent nature. My friend disagreed, saying that human life is more important and thus should be respected and protected more than the lives of animals. Who is right and who is wrong in this argument? Answer: In my opinion, if we have to determine who is right or wrong, both of you are correct, but only from a certain perspective. Why is that? Because you are speaking from a standpoint of compassion and principle, while your friend is speaking from the standpoint of the value of life. Let me elaborate. From the perspective of compassion, what you stated is very reasonable. The Buddha taught that Buddhists should always cultivate compassion for all living beings. All creatures have a life and desire to live freely. Just as we value our own lives, other beings also value theirs. Therefore, a compassionate person would not want to harm any being, whether human or animal. The Buddha also taught that all sentient beings possess Buddha nature. Nirvana Sutra, all sentient beings have Buddha nature. While the physical forms of beings differ, their intrinsic nature does not. Respecting this inherent nature means not killing any living beings, no matter how small, such as worms or grasshoppers, as you mentioned. Thus, your point aligns with the Buddha's teachings and human compassion, and I confidently assert that you are correct. However, from the perspective of the value of life, comparing the importance of human life to that of animal life, your friend's assertion is also correct. We must clearly define the scope of the precept against killing. The primary principle is that the Buddha forbids Buddhists from killing humans. The value of human life, in terms of both physiology and psychology, has many superior qualities that animals do not possess. This is why humans are considered superior beings, while animals are considered inferior. Let's examine some basic qualities. In terms of intelligence, humans have remarkable cognitive abilities, capable of inventing advanced technologies and machines, as evidenced by current scientists and scholars. Humans can discern right from wrong, cultivate virtues, correct mistakes, and aspire to the highest spiritual achievements, like those of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Moreover, humans possess exceptional reasoning and memory. In summary, these intellectual capabilities are not found in other animals. In terms of merit, humans possess superior physical forms and live more civilized and cultured lives than animals. Humans also enjoy more luxurious and refined food and amenities. Regarding the value of life, it is evident that human life is worth 100,000 times more than animal life. Let's consider a practical example. Suppose your child is critically ill, and the doctor says that a rare medicine worth 20,000 yuan is needed to save their life. You would undoubtedly do everything possible, even borrow money, to save your child. However, if your pet dog is critically ill and requires the same expensive treatment, would you be as willing to spend that much? Most likely you would give it some basic treatment and let nature take its course. Thus, comparing the two lives, it's clear that human life is valued much more than animal life. Another example. If a terrorist group entered Australia and killed all the flies and mosquitoes, how would the Australian government and people react? They would likely be grateful, not angry. On the other hand, if the same group killed numerous people, they would face severe retaliation, as seen in historical events. This illustrates the higher value placed on human life compared to animals. If you believe that killing a grasshopper is as serious a crime as killing a human, that is not correct. As discussed, human life is far more valuable than animal life, so they cannot be considered equally severe offenses. In my view, killing a human is a grave crime, whereas killing an animal is a lesser offense. Even secular laws prioritize human protection over animal protection, though animals are also safeguarded to some extent. In conclusion, considering the arguments presented by both sides, each is correct from their respective viewpoints. However, combining both perspectives would provide a more comprehensive understanding of the precept against killing. 3. What is the meaning of pressing hands together? Question. Why do Buddhists press their hands together when chanting, bowing, or greeting each other? What is the meaning behind this gesture? Answer. Pressing hands together, known in Sino-Vietnamese as Hip Chung or in Sanskrit as Anjali, is a significant gesture in Buddhism. The explanation is as follows. Pressing the two hands together focuses the mind and expresses reverence. This form of greeting and respect has been practiced in India since ancient times and was adopted by Buddhism. Indians believe the right hand is sacred and the left hand is impure. However, when the two hands are joined together, they symbolize the union of purity and impurity, representing the truest nature of a person. The concept of neither pure nor impure in the Heart Sutra reflects this idea. Many Buddhist scriptures and commentaries mention this gesture. For example, the Skillful Means chapter of the Lotus Sutra states, respectfully pressing hands together in reverence. The Contemplation Sutra of Amitayus records, pressing hands together, praising the Buddhas. Beyond symbolizing internal reverence, pressing hands together signifies returning to the source, achieving a state beyond dualistic distinctions where phenomena and principles are in harmony. According to the Great Tang records on the Western regions too, Pressing hands together is the fourth of 9 ways of greeting in India. In esoteric Buddhism, the gesture integrates with the Vajra Dhatu and Garbha Dhatu mandalas, or wisdom and insight, or concentration and wisdom, etc., aligning the 10 fingers with the 5 great elements and 10 paramitas, among other meanings. Furthermore, the commentary on the Mahavairokkana Sutra 13 lists 12 ways of pressing hands together, each with its own profound meaning. 1. Steadfast mind pressing hands tightly together, fingertips aligned. 2. Empty mind pressing hands, also called empty mind pressing hands together, fingertips aligned with a slight space in between. 3. Unfolded lotus pressing hands, fingertips aligned, palms forming a budding lotus shape. 4. Half-open lotus pressing hands with thumbs and little fingers touching, other fingers apart, resembling a half-bloomed lotus. 5. Revealed pressing hands with palms touching, fingers pointing upwards. 6. Holding water pressing hands upwards, cupped as if scooping water. 7. Diamond pressing hands, also called diamond pressing hands, right hand fingers over left hand fingers. 8. Reversed crossing pressing hands in reverse, right hand over left hand. 9. Reverse cross-back pressing hands, backs of hands together, right hand over left hand. 10. Horizontal pressing hands horizontally, index fingers touching. 11. Inverted pressing hands with palms facing down, index fingers touching. 12. Inverted pressing hands with thumbs touching, pressing hands with palms facing down, thumbs touching. Each of these 12 types of pressing hands carries a unique and profound significance. 4. Why do people stop by their house with the coffin? Question. Practitioners of the Pure Land tradition of Buddhism aim to be reborn in the Pure Land through reciting the Buddha's name and having a mindset free of attachment to worldly desires. However, I often see that when these practitioners pass away, their coffins are brought to visit their homes one last time before being cremated or buried. Does this contradict the vow of detachment to be reborn in the Pure Land? Answer. This matter can be explained from 2 perspectives. From a worldly perspective, which we call the mundane truth, this practice does not contradict common cultural norms. It aligns well with the traditional customs of Vietnamese culture. Our ancestors believed that a person lives with a house and in death has a grave. Therefore, having a home is very important to Vietnamese people. The saying, "settle down and thrive," reflects this sentiment. In Vietnam, it is common for the deceased to die at home, or even if they die in a hospital, their bodies are brought back home for funeral rites. However, in Australia, things are different. Most people die in hospitals, and their bodies are taken to funeral homes. Thus, bodies are rarely kept at home due to various inconveniences. Therefore, when transporting the coffin for cremation or burial, the family often stops by the house for the deceased to visit one last time, sometimes according to the deceased's wishes. From a spiritual perspective, especially for those practicing the Pure Land tradition with the vow to be reborn in the Pure Land after death, this practice is not very reasonable for several reasons. Firstly, it contradicts the practitioner's vow made during their lifetime. Pure Land practitioners have a heartfelt vow to be reborn in the Pure Land after death. This sincere vow implies that material possessions and the house are transient and insignificant, so there should be no attachment or desire to revisit them. Visiting the house does not help in any way and can hinder the vow to be reborn in the Pure Land. Secondly, it can cause the spirit to lose focus and become attached. The scriptures teach that if the mind is not focused, one cannot be reborn in the Pure Land. If the mind is attached, one cannot transcend the cycle of birth and death. Mindfulness and a focused mind are crucial for those who have just passed away. If we bring them back to see familiar places, they might develop attachments and desires, which can hinder their rebirth. According to the scriptures, those who are not extremely virtuous or sinful fall into an intermediate state after death, where their consciousness is very weak. By causing them to develop attachments, we hinder their liberation. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root cause of the cycle of birth and death, pushing the consciousness to create karma and suffer. Therefore, if we truly care for our loved ones, we should follow the Buddhist teachings carefully. Thirdly, it contradicts the practice of aiding the deceased. Helping the deceased maintain mindfulness and clarity is crucial. In Australia, this can be challenging as patients often stay in hospitals. However, playing recordings of Buddhist chants can help patients stay focused and calm. This practice benefits the deceased, helping them maintain mindfulness and a peaceful state of mind. In summary, bringing the coffin to visit the house one last time is not recommended for Pure Land practitioners. It creates obstacles to their vow of rebirth in the Pure Land. We should prioritize the vow over worldly customs, ensuring the deceased's journey to the Pure Land is not hindered. Additionally, this practice can save time for friends and family, which increases their merit. These suggestions are based on Buddhist scriptures, and the choice is ultimately up to each individual. 5. The issue of true and false ego. Question. In Buddhism, sometimes it is said that the ego is not real, and at other times it is said that the ego is true. There are even times when the ego is exalted as unique and supreme, such as when the Buddha first proclaimed, "In the heavens above and on the earth below, I alone am the honored one." Why is it that the ego is sometimes described as real and sometimes as not real? Does this not contradict itself? Answer: there is no contradiction. The term ego, or self, can be interpreted in different contexts. To help you understand the term ego better, I will quote a definition from the Huayquan Buddhist Dictionary, Volume 5. The original meaning of ego is breath, which then extends to life, self, body, self-ego, essence, self-nature, or it refers to an independently eternal entity, latent in the source of all things and governing the unified individual. This is one of the most crucial themes in Indian philosophical thought. To be considered an ego, it must fulfill 3 criteria: sovereignty, permanence, and independence. The ego that Buddhism denies or teaches as non-self, anatta, refers to the ego that is formed by dependent conditions. Since it is formed by dependent conditions, it lacks sovereignty, permanence, and independence. The body we currently possess is considered an illusory body because it is composed of the 5 aggregates, skandhas: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. The physical form consists of the 4 great elements: earth, water, wind, and fire. These elements combine under coercion and often conflict with each other, which is why we frequently experience illness. This explains the composition of the material aspect. Regarding the mental aspect, it is also composed of 4 elements: sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Sensation refers to the experience of pleasure, pain, or neutrality. Perception refers to recalling past events or imagining future ones. Mental formations refer to the changing processes of the mind. Consciousness refers to the discernment of right and wrong, good and bad, etc. These 4 elements create our current psychological state. Therefore, each of our bodies is composed of 2 parts, material and mental. Since they are composed, they must be formed from various components. Anything that is composed must eventually disintegrate. This is a fundamental principle of dependent origination. Hence, Buddhism refers to this body as non-self because it is composed of many transient elements and is not truly real. Conversely, the true self that Buddhism refers to is the true ego. This self represents the essence of life. Life has 2 aspects, temporary and eternal. Temporary life is subject to the realm of dependent origination and karmic causation. Eternal life transcends the realm of dependent origination and dualistic causation. In Buddhism, this eternal life is referred to by various names, such as true self, dharma body, Buddha nature, nirvana, original face, absolute truth, etc. It is an entity that is neither born nor dies. The phrase, "in the heavens above and on the earth below, I alone am the honored one," refers to the true self, not the ordinary self formed by dependent conditions. We should not misunderstand and think that the Buddha was being arrogant and elevating his personal ego above all else. This true self is one of the 4 attributes of nirvana described in the Great Nirvana Sutra: true permanence, true happiness, true self, and true purity. How can one see the Tathagata, Buddha? It is not possible to see the Tathagata with physical eyes through physical forms, because physical forms are formed by dependent conditions and are thus non-self. Nor can one hear the Buddha through sound and think that is seeing the Buddha, because sound is also temporarily formed by dependent conditions. Those who seek the Buddha through physical forms or sounds are criticized by the Buddha as practicing wrongly and will never truly see the Buddha. To see the Buddha, one must see with the mind, recognizing the eternally pure, luminous, and unchanging essence within each of us. This is seeing the Buddha or Tathagata. Here, Tathagata should be understood as the Dharma body of the Buddha, not the reward body. The Dharma body of the Buddha is another name for the true self or great self. Those who directly perceive this luminous essence are said to have awakened to the path and realized their true nature. In summary, when it is said that the ego is not real, it refers to the ego formed by dependent conditions, known as the false self, a temporarily existing self that functions within a certain time. When it is said that the ego is true, it refers to the ego that transcends dependent origination and duality. This ego has no form or appearance and is called the true self or absolute truth, etc. 6. The meaning of the Buddha's 7 steps. Question: when the Buddha was born, he took 7 steps and then stopped, instead of taking 8 or 6 steps, and a lotus flower appeared with each step. What is the significance of the 7 steps? Answer: this issue has various explanations. To this day, there is no consensus on which explanation is correct, as each theory has its own reasoning. One theory suggests that, according to the specific perspective of Buddhism and the general viewpoint of ancient Indian thought, the formation of a world is due to the combination of many tiny particles. In modern scientific terms, this would be the combination of many atoms or molecules. These tiny particles combine to form larger particles, and this process continues until a world is formed. However, how do these tiny particles combine? According to Buddhist teachings, there is a central main particle, surrounded by 6 smaller particles. In Buddhist terminology, this is known as the 7 particles, or 7 dust particles. These are 7 very fine particles that almost resemble space itself. If these particles are split apart, they would dissolve into emptiness. From these 7 tiny particles, they combine to form a cow's hair tip particle. From 7 cow's hair tip particles, they combine to form a rabbit's hair tip particle, and so on. Thus, the number 7 arises from the combination of many tiny particles. Clearly, no dust particle exists independently. It must rely on the combination of many minute particles to form. Therefore, the image of the Buddha taking 7 steps at birth symbolizes his journey through all places in the world. Additionally, it represents that the sound of his teachings would resonate throughout the entire cosmos. The lotus flower symbolizes purity. Despite being born into this impure world, the Buddha was never tainted by its impurities. This is due to his vow to be born into the world to save all sentient beings. 7 differences in worship practices between Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism. Question: both Theravada and Mahayana Buddhists follow the teachings of the Buddha, but their worship practices differ significantly. In Theravada temples, only a single statue of the Buddha Shakyamuni and the Arahants are worshipped, resembling Indian aesthetics. Conversely, Mahayana temples venerate not only Shakyamuni Buddha but also numerous other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and the Buddha statues often resemble the local people of each country. Why are there such differences? Answer: the differences in worship practices arise from the distinct perspectives and traditions of the 2 branches of Buddhism. In Theravada Buddhism, also known as the original or orthodox Buddhism, followers view the Buddha Shakyamuni as a normal human being who had basic needs like eating, clothing, and shelter, and who also experienced the same suffering of birth, aging, illness, and death as all humans do. However, the Buddha is distinguished from ordinary people by his complete enlightenment achieved through his own effort after renouncing worldly life. According to Theravada, apart from Buddha Shakyamuni, there are no other Buddhas. Therefore, they exclusively worship the image of Buddha Shakyamuni, typically in a form resembling an Indian person, since he was an Indian prince who attained Buddhahood. This perspective is consistent with the teachings found in the 4 Nikaya scriptures. In contrast, Mahayana Buddhism, also known as the Great Vehicle or Progressive Buddhism, holds a different view. Mahayana practitioners believe that the physical body of the Buddha is merely an emanation or transformation body, Nirmanakaya, that manifests to guide sentient beings. They assert that the Buddha had achieved Buddhahood countless eons ago. Mahayana teachings posit that every sentient being possesses Buddha nature or Dharmakaya, which is eternal, unchanging, and omnipresent throughout the universe. Consequently, there is no place without the presence of Buddha. The human form of Buddha Shakyamuni is seen as just one of countless manifestations throughout infinite lifetimes and forms, suggesting that the Buddha transcends all national and cultural boundaries. As a result, Mahayana Buddhism includes the worship of various Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, each assisting in the liberation of beings and introducing each other's virtues and practices. For instance, Buddha Shakyamuni introduces the virtues and practices of Buddha Amitabha of the Western Pure Land to help beings in this world aspire for rebirth in that Pure Land. Similarly, bodhisattvas like Avalokiteshvara, Guanyin, are believed to appear in any form necessary to alleviate the suffering of sentient beings. This inclusive and adaptable approach allows Mahayana Buddhists to create images of the Buddha that reflect the appearance of the local people, making the Buddha seem more relatable and accessible to them. This cultural adaptation helps to foster a sense of personal connection and cultural relevance. Hence, in Mahayana temples, it is common to find statues of various Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, each embodying different aspects of enlightenment and compassion. In summary, the different worship practices in Theravada and Mahayana Buddhism reflect their respective doctrinal interpretations and cultural adaptations. Theravada focuses on the historical Buddha Shakyamuni and adheres to a more singular representation of him, whereas Mahayana embraces a broader, more inclusive view that recognizes multiple Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and adapts their representations to resonate with diverse cultures. 8. The meaning of the Wheel of Dharma. Question. Observing the emblem of a wheel with 12 spokes, some people say it represents the wheel of samsara. They explain that the 12 spokes symbolize the 12 links of dependent origination. Others say it represents the wheel of Dharma, Dharma chakra. Which interpretation is correct? Answer. If we must determine which interpretation is correct, I would immediately say that the explanation of the wheel with 12 spokes symbolizing the wheel of samsara is accurate. Why? Because the teaching of the 12 links of dependent origination, from ignorance to old age and death, is a chain, a cyclic pattern in which sentient beings are perpetually bound within the 3 realms and 6 paths. To escape or sever this binding chain, each person must eliminate ignorance, as it is the primary cause of suffering. Therefore, the wheel with 12 spokes is used to signify the cycle of samsara, where beings continuously endure suffering. As for the wheel of Dharma, Dharma chakra, it is depicted with 8 spokes to symbolize the Noble Eightfold Path. The number 8 represents the Eightfold Path, which includes right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. In the 4 Noble Truths, suffering, origin, cessation, and path, the Eightfold Path belongs to the path, Magga, truth. The path truth comprises 37 factors, commonly referred to as the 37 aids to enlightenment. These 37 aids include the 4 foundations of mindfulness, 4 right efforts, 4 bases of supernatural power, 5 faculties, 5 powers, 7 factors of enlightenment, and the Eightfold Path. Among these 37 aids, the Eightfold Path is the most crucial, as it is the Eightfold Path that leads sentient beings to enlightenment and liberation. In other words, it is the 8 methods to extinguish suffering and attain the bliss of nirvana, cessation truth. Therefore, to remind everyone of these important 8 paths, the wheel with 8 spokes is used to symbolize the meaning of the wheel of Dharma. 9. The issue of ghosts and spirits. Question. Buddhism is a religion of enlightenment and it never accepts superstition. So why do we see references to deities like heavenly deities, forest deities, tree deities, ghosts, and spirits scattered throughout the scriptures? What does this signify? Does Buddhism also believe in vague spirits and deities? And does Buddhism also adhere to polytheism? Answer. Buddhism firmly rejects the acceptance of superstitions, especially those that involve blind belief in deity worship without rational thinking. Buddhism does not advocate the practice of worshiping ghosts or spirits as a means of pleading for blessings or relief from suffering. However, according to Buddhist concepts, the vast universe and the infinite world naturally contain countless sentient beings appearing in various forms depending on the karmic results of each species. This diversity is due to the karmic causes each species creates, leading to different kinds of existences. For example, some beings live underwater, like shrimp and fish. Some live in the air, like deities, and some live on land, like humans and other animals and plants. Therefore, ghosts and spirits are also a type of sentient being among countless others. In Buddhist scriptures, such as the Earth Store Sutra, the Buddha mentions many types of ghosts and spirits. However, these references illustrate the varying karmic experiences of sentient beings in the cycle of the 6 realms of samsara. It is not an endorsement of the belief that ghosts or spirits have the power to bestow blessings or cause harm, nor does it imply that people should worship them. This practice is strongly discouraged in Buddhism. Buddhist teachings also provide insights into the world, indicating that there are sentient beings with feelings and non-sentient beings. Visible beings with forms and invisible beings without forms, all existing due to karmic conditions. Thus, no being governs another except through mutual existence, governed by the laws of cause and effect. Therefore, the Buddha never advised anyone to pray to ghosts or spirits, as they are also sentient beings suffering like all others and uncertain when they might achieve liberation, unless they turn towards spiritual practice. In conclusion, Buddhism acknowledges the existence of ghosts and spirits as beings experiencing karmic results, but it does not accept the power of any deity to create or control the world, whether a single deity or multiple deities. Furthermore, the Buddha never encouraged his disciples to believe in divine powers or to worship and pray for favors from ghosts or spirits. A core tenet of taking refuge in Buddhism is not to take refuge in deities, spirits, ghosts, or any other entities. Even regarding deities, Buddhists are not to rely on them. Why? Because deities are also sentient beings, comparable to humans, as they too are disciples of the Buddha and considered as brothers and sisters in the Dharma. They only differ in their greater enjoyment of karmic rewards. However, they lack the opportunity to encounter the Dharma for cultivation. When their merits are exhausted, they must return to human existence to begin their practice again. Hence, it is uncertain who is truly superior. This shows that even deities who have greater merit are not relied upon in Buddhism, let alone ghosts and spirits with lesser merits. Believing in them would only bring harm, as it contradicts the Buddhist teachings on karma and entrusts one's fate to something uncertain, ignoring the truth that happiness or suffering is determined by oneself. 10. How to release animals properly. Question. On significant Buddhist holidays such as Vesak or Vulan, I often see some Buddhists buying birds or pigeons to release them. However, they do not release them immediately. Instead, they bring them to the temple, keep them caged, and wait for the monks to perform a ceremony before releasing them. Sometimes the monks are busy and cannot perform the ceremony right away, so the animals are kept in cages, sometimes overnight, until the next day, or until the formal ceremony, such as during Vesak, is conducted. Is releasing animals in this way in line with the true meaning of releasing life? Do people who buy animals for release in this manner gain much merit? Answer. Upon careful consideration, it seems that this practice does not fully align with the true meaning of releasing life. In essence, the correct way to release life is to free the animals immediately after purchasing them. What is the motive behind releasing life? It stems from compassion. Out of compassion, we feel pity for the suffering animals that are crying out for help. Out of kindness, we spend money to buy these animals, but once bought, they should be released immediately so that they can enjoy freedom. The ancient saying goes, "One day in prison is like 1,000 years of freedom outside." Hence, this captures the true essence of releasing life. This way, it truly generates merit and aligns with the Buddhist teachings on compassion. Conversely, when animals are bought and brought to the temple to wait for a ceremony, and if the monks are busy and not able to perform it promptly, the poor animals suffer greatly, crowded in their cages, waiting anxiously. If they could speak, they might plead, "Please, release us now out of compassion rather than waiting for a ceremony." Waiting and listening to the prolonged chanting is torture. It would be better if we were killed quickly rather than enduring this long suffering. This kind of compassion brings us even more pain. Such a plea is quite reasonable. In reality, some animals may die or become crippled before they are released due to the prolonged wait. Thus, this not only fails to generate merit, but also increases suffering. Who are the ceremonies for? Are they for the Buddha or Bodhisattvas? The Buddha and Bodhisattvas would not approve of prolonging the suffering of sentient beings. Are they for the monks and nuns? Compassionate monks and nuns would not tolerate seeing such prolonged suffering. In summary, a seemingly meritorious act, if not done correctly, can result in harm rather than merit. Therefore, releasing life in this manner does not truly align with the purpose of releasing life and does not generate the intended merit. Thus, Buddhists with good intentions should be more mindful in their actions when they intend to release animals. 11. Is reciting Buddha's name to seek rebirth in the Pure Land selfish? Question. Some people say that those who practice Pure Land Buddhism and recite Buddha's name to seek rebirth in the Pure Land are selfish. They argue that these individuals only think about their own benefits, disregarding their relatives, friends, and everyone else suffering in the Saha world. Is this view reasonable? Answer. Whether this view is reasonable or not depends on the context. In my opinion, it might be reasonable to some extent, but it cannot be said to be entirely reasonable. If one firmly asserts that those who recite Buddha's name and seek rebirth in the Western Pure Land are completely selfish, only thinking of themselves, such a criticism might be a bit harsh. Why? Because the vow of those who recite Buddha's name and seek rebirth in the Pure Land is not to enjoy the pleasures there permanently. Their true intention is to go there to continue their practice until they achieve complete enlightenment and become Buddhas. Once they have achieved enlightenment, they will return to the Saha world to help sentient beings. Clearly, they are not heartless or ungrateful. It is just like someone who does not want to risk drowning while attempting to save others when they themselves do not know how to swim. They prefer to ensure their own safety first before attempting to save others. Therefore, they seek a secure place to build their inner strength. Only then will they return to rescue others. Such individuals are far-sighted and well-prepared. They act according to the teachings and introductions of Shakyamuni Buddha. So, while they are temporarily absent from this world, others might see them as selfish. But this is not necessarily true. For instance, consider those who become monks. When they enter the monastery, they leave behind their parents, relatives, and friends. During their time in the monastery, they focus on their practice. Does this mean that these monks are selfish and ungrateful? At first glance, it might seem that way, but upon closer examination, it is not. After attaining enlightenment, they will travel to spread the Dharma and benefit sentient beings. Therefore, their time in the monastery is a period of preparation for their future work of spreading the Dharma. Another example is a Vietnamese student who learns from a university professor that there is a specialized university in the United States that aligns perfectly with his interests. He decides to go to the United States to study. His intention is to return to Vietnam after completing his studies to serve his country. Is this student selfish for wanting to go abroad to study? Just because he is temporarily absent from his homeland, can we accuse him of being selfish? Similarly, people learn about the practice of reciting Buddha's name and seeking rebirth in the Pure Land through the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. Just like the student, those who wish to be reborn in the Pure Land must meet certain conditions. They need faith, vows, and practice. The Pure Land offers many favorable conditions for their cultivation. Once they have met these conditions and are reborn in the Pure Land, their sole intention is to continue their practice until they achieve complete enlightenment. Then they will return to this world to help sentient beings. Such a vow cannot be seen as selfish. Some might argue that they have never seen anyone return from the Pure Land. However, the vow of the Bodhisattva to help sentient beings does not always make their origins known. History shows that when bodhisattvas are recognized, they often disappear. For example, Han Shan, Shi De, and Master Shan Dao are believed to be manifestations of Amitabha Buddha. In summary, those who recite Buddha's name and vow to be reborn in the Pure Land to continue their practice and then return to this world to spread the Dharma are not selfish. Their vows are aligned with the compassionate teachings of the Buddhas. Only those who wish to stay in the Pure Land forever without returning to help sentient beings can be considered selfish. This goes against the compassionate teachings of the Buddha and is deserving of criticism. Otherwise, such accusations are unwarranted. 12. Does monastic chanting lead to liberation? Question. Does monastic chanting lead to liberation for the guilty, as seen in the story of the monk chanting for Muklian Tande to free her from the realm of hungry ghosts? Does this act of prayer have any effect on the sinful, and does it fall under superstition? Answer. To address this question clearly, we will break it down into two parts. 1. What effect does this prayer have on the sinful? The prayer does indeed have an effect, but this effect depends on various factors. Positive factors yield good results, while negative ones do not. In the case of Muklian Tande, she was liberated from the suffering of the hungry ghost realm due to several favorable conditions. First, her son, the Venerable Madgalyana, was very filial and earnestly conducted offerings to the Sangha as instructed by the Buddha. Second, the monks who prayed for her were pure practitioners who had just completed a 3-month summer retreat, which made their prayers particularly powerful. The purity of their minds contributed significantly to the strength of their prayers, creating a powerful influence aimed at Muklian Tande. In philosophical terms, this can be seen as telepathic connection. Although invisible, it is extremely powerful. The ancients said, "Sincerity moves mountains and cracks stones." This means that sincere dedication can achieve incredible results. Here's a story to illustrate this. In the book, 10 Essentials of Buddha Recitation, by the late Venerable Thich Thien Tam, there is a story about a young man in France who lost his wife and was deeply distressed. He went to the countryside for solace and stayed with a blacksmith's family, where he fell in love with the blacksmith's daughter and proposed to marry her. However, before the wedding, he had relations with her and then abandoned her. The blacksmith, seeing his daughter's growing belly in the absence of the young man, was furious. Every evening he would hammer a piece of iron, calling out the young man's name in anger. Meanwhile, in the city, the young man started experiencing severe headaches every evening at 5 p.m. After various treatments failed, a friend who had visited the blacksmith's village learned of the situation and advised the young man to apologize and marry the blacksmith's daughter. Once he did so, his headaches ceased. This story shows the powerful, invisible strength of the mind. Third, Muklian Tande herself was the main factor. The Buddha's grace and the monk's prayers were merely supportive forces. Thanks to these strong supportive forces, her mind was awakened and she sincerely repented. This sincere repentance led to her liberation and rebirth in the celestial realm. The sutra says, sin arises from the mind and is also eradicated by the mind. When the mind ceases, sin also vanishes. When both sin and the mind are eradicated, true repentance is achieved. 2. Is this act of prayer superstition? This act is not superstition, but aligns with the spirit of enlightenment in Buddhism, which emphasizes self-awareness. Here are some stories to illustrate this. In the book, The First Step to Learning Buddhism by Venerable Thich Tu, the Buddha recounts past lives. Once the Buddha was an unfilial son. After dying and falling into hell, he saw a person with a ring of fire on their head, screaming in pain. When asked why, the person explained that they were suffering for being unfilial. The person said that their suffering would end when another unfilial person replaced them. Suddenly, the ring of fire moved to the Buddha's head, causing intense pain. Realizing the immense suffering, he vowed, "May no one in the world be unfilial like me. I alone will bear this suffering forever." Instantly, the ring of fire disappeared and he was reborn in a better place. Another story recounts the Buddha's past life as a cruel hunter who, after dying, was forced to pull a heavy cart in hell. Seeing others suffering, he vowed, "May I bear all this suffering alone." Instantly, he was liberated from hell. These stories, though allegorical, demonstrate the power of a compassionate and moral mind in overcoming suffering. Similarly, Muklian Tande's liberation was due to the collective intention of the monks, awakening her to repent sincerely. A more concrete example, suppose Mr. A is heavily addicted to opium. His filial son, Mr. B, deeply concerned, seeks advice from his revered teacher. The teacher advises Mr. B to gather friends and respected monks to collectively urge Mr. A to quit his addiction. Following this advice, Mr. A, moved by the sincere concern of his son and others, decides to quit. His success is due to his determination, aided by the support of those around him. This example shows that Mr. A's liberation from addiction is primarily due to his own willpower, supported by the concern and encouragement of others, akin to the supportive prayers of the monks for Mut Lian Tan Day. Therefore, it is clear that this practice is not superstition, but aligns with the principles of self-awareness and personal effort in Buddhism. 13. The difference between right mindfulness and no mind. Question: how do right mindfulness and no mind differ from each other? Answer: the fundamental difference between right mindfulness and no mind is right mindfulness. This is one of the Eightfold Path components and belongs to the teachings of Theravada Buddhism. Right mindfulness means remembering beneficial and righteous things that bring benefit to oneself and others, and valuing high and noble truths. Specifically, right mindfulness can be understood as remembering to be aware of what one is doing. Naturally, this involves focusing on what one is doing without letting the mind wander to other matters. No mind. This concept belongs to Zen Buddhism. In Zen, no mind does not mean having no mind at all, like a stone or tree. Instead, no mind means not being attached to anything. In other words, it means not letting delusive thoughts arise in response to sensory perceptions, and keeping the mind always tranquil. In contrast, right mindfulness involves the arising of thoughts related to actions. Therefore, right mindfulness and no mind cannot be the same. No mind corresponds to right concentration, as right mindfulness is not the final stage, but right concentration is the final stage of the Eightfold Path. 14. Chanting at home. Is it necessary to use bells and wooden fish drums? Question: at home, we usually chant sutras in the evenings, but we don't know how to use the bells and wooden fish drums. Is it okay for us to chant without using these instruments? And how should we chant to gain the most benefit? Answer: the purpose of chanting is to understand the meaning of the sutras and to learn from the Buddha's teachings so that we can apply them to our daily lives. This is where the true benefit lies. Therefore, when chanting, it is important to chant slowly and clearly, and it is not necessary to use bells and wooden fish drums. The reason for using these instruments is mainly for group chanting. The wooden fish drum helps keep the rhythm so that everyone can chant harmoniously together, ensuring that no one chants too fast or too slow. Therefore, it is quite important to know how to use the drum correctly. The person playing the drum needs to learn how to keep a consistent rhythm. In Zen monasteries, the person playing the drum is called Duyet Chum, which means to bring joy to the group, ensuring that everyone has a pleasant experience during the chanting session. Properly playing the drum can bring merit, while incorrect playing, which disrupts the rhythm and causes discomfort, can bring negative consequences. The person responsible for striking the bell is called Dui Na, which means the conductor of the ceremony. In temples, due to the large number of people chanting, the use of bells and drums is necessary. However, at home, if a lay person is chanting alone, there is no need to use these instruments. If you already have a bell and drum at home, you may use them if you wish, but it is generally better to keep things simple and not rely on these tools. When chanting, depending on your health and habits, you can chant loudly, softly, or even silently to yourself. The key point is that the purpose of chanting is to understand the teachings of the Buddha as conveyed in the sutras, and to apply these teachings in daily life for practical benefit. If you find that you do not understand the sutras while chanting, you should seek guidance from monks or nuns at a temple. 15. Tasting non-vegetarian food on vegetarian days. Question: I follow a vegetarian diet for 4 months a year and 10 days each month. However, on my vegetarian days, I still have to cook for my family, so I taste the food as usual to make sure it tastes good because I'm afraid they won't enjoy it, and leftover food would be wasted. Is this acceptable? Answer: it is good for a Buddhist to make a vow to follow a vegetarian diet. The purpose of a vegetarian diet is to nurture compassion and reduce the killing of living beings. However, since you are living with your family and are responsible for cooking, you need to taste the food while preparing it. In reality, tasting the food is not considered a sin. In the past, the sixth patriarch Hui Neng, during his time in hiding, lived with hunters. For meals, he would pick vegetables to boil in the same pot as their meat, then eat the vegetables. Despite his high status as a patriarch, he had to eat in this way due to his circumstances. Similarly, as a layperson, you need to consider the happiness of your family, your husband and children, and not make them unhappy because of your diet. From our perspective, tasting the food is not sinful. The important thing is your intention. If, while tasting, you develop a craving or desire, then that is a fault. This fault lies in deceiving yourself, not anyone else. However, if you taste the food without any craving, then there is no issue. Thus, you should reflect on your intention. If you find that you develop cravings, it is better to let those who eat meat season their own food. 16. The meaning of the Buddha's long and broad tongue. Question. In the Amitabha Sutra, it is said that the Buddha's tongue is long and broad, covering the entire trichiliocosm. What does this phenomenon mean? Is it true? Answer. This phenomenon is symbolic and not to be taken literally. The meaning behind the Buddha having such a long and broad tongue is that over countless eons, the Buddha never spoke falsely. Consequently, he attained this remarkable feature. In contrast, ordinary beings like us, over many lifetimes, have spoken lies, embellished stories, and used deceitful words to manipulate others for personal gain. As a result, our tongues are currently no longer than 3 inches. The sutras state that anyone who refrains from lying for 3 lifetimes will have a tongue that can touch the tip of their nose. This description serves to encourage us to avoid lying and to speak truthfully. Honest words are believed and followed by others. If we interpret the sutra literally, suggesting that the Buddha's tongue covers the entire trichiliocosm, it would be impractical for the Buddha to speak or teach. Therefore, it is said, to interpret the sutra literally is to wrong the Buddhas of the 3 periods. To deviate from the sutra by even a single word is to speak as the demons do. This caution reminds us to be careful when interpreting Buddhist scriptures. 17. Worshipping Shakyamuni Buddha, but greeting each other with Amitabha. Question. Why do most people in this world worship Shakyamuni Buddha, but when Buddhists meet each other, they greet each other with the phrase Amitabha Buddha instead of Shakyamuni Buddha? Answer. Shakyamuni Buddha is the founding teacher of our Saha world, and people honor him to remember his immense contributions to teaching and guiding beings towards liberation. Thanks to his teachings, people follow the path of practice and attain liberation. Therefore, almost all Mahayana and Theravada Buddhist temples venerate him. His name is chanted during ceremonies and recitations, but not commonly used as a greeting. This is because Buddhism consists of many sects, and it is primarily the practitioners of the Pure Land sect who greet each other with Amitabha Buddha. Other sects do not follow this practice. Pure Land practitioners greet each other this way to remind themselves of the Buddha they are devoted to and aspire to meet. This greeting is both respectful and serves as a reminder not to forget the Buddha's name. For Pure Land practitioners, chanting Namo Amitabha Buddha is a central practice. Regardless of the time and place, practitioners must always keep this recitation in mind. Only then can they hope to fulfill their wish of being reborn in the Pure Land. Therefore, greeting each other with the phrase Amitabha Buddha by joining hands and bowing is both appropriate and beneficial. 18. How to prevent sin for both mother and child. Question. On the days when I observe the 8 precepts, I ask my child to drive me to the temple, but I notice that they are not happy to help. If I take a taxi to the temple, I feel very sad. How can we both avoid committing sin? Answer. If you feel sad because your child is unwilling to drive you to the temple, I sincerely advise you not to be upset. Your child may have personal reasons for not being able to drive you. You should try to understand and empathize with young people in this country. If your child does not drive you and you take a taxi instead, there is no reason to feel sad or guilty. If you feel sad, it only detracts from your experience of observing the 8 precepts and studying at the temple. The purpose of going to the temple is to cultivate a peaceful and joyful mind. Carrying sadness and frustration defeats this purpose. Therefore, if your child willingly helps you, they are being filial and considerate, understanding their duty to support and show respect to their parents. This is also an opportunity for them to repay some of the gratitude they owe to their parents. If your child is unable to help, you might reflect on whether it is due to a lack of merit on your part, and thus strive to practice more diligently. Understand why your child does not help. Did you do something to upset them? Are they tired from work, studying late, or socializing over the weekend? If so, show them more understanding and compassion, rather than criticizing or scolding, which only leads to mutual unhappiness. When both you and your child are unhappy, your visits to the temple do not bring true benefit. It is better to handle this situation skillfully and flexibly, ensuring that both your temple visits and family life remain harmonious and joyful. This way, you exemplify a true practitioner who understands and follows the Dharma, positively influencing your family. Conversely, causing additional suffering for yourself and your family over a small issue is counterproductive. Maintaining family harmony, especially the bond between mother and child, is crucial. Otherwise, your child might mock you for prioritizing temple visits over genuine practice. True practice involves constantly improving one's mind and reducing defilements such as greed, anger, and delusion. Only then can one be considered a true practitioner. In summary, if your child does not drive you and you become angry, you will only disturb your own peace of mind, hindering your progress in practice. Your child does not commit a sin against the Buddha, but merely makes you unhappy. It is best for both mother and child to understand, empathize with, and help each other. This way, both your practice and your child's filial duties are fulfilled, bringing practical benefits to both. Wishing you perseverance and patience in your practice. 19. Can I ordain at home due to poor health? Question. I have the intention to ordain, but due to poor health and frequent illnesses, I cannot stay at the temple. So, after ordaining, can I practice at home? Answer. This is not a question that we can definitively answer. If you have such an intention, it is best to clearly present your situation to the teacher you plan to ordain under. After thoroughly explaining, it will be up to that teacher to instruct and resolve the matter to fulfill your wish. However, in my opinion, if your health is poor and you frequently suffer from illnesses, it would be better to maintain the form of a lay practitioner. Strive to practice according to the vows of a monk, aiming to eradicate defilements from the three realms. Achieving any part of this goal is beneficial. If you ordain but do not study and practice according to the monastic vows, it may only lead to further transgressions. Therefore, it might be better for you to remain a lay practitioner, diligently chanting the Buddha's name and seeking rebirth in a pure land. In my view, this would be more advantageous. In form, you may remain a lay person, but in essence, you are orienting yourself towards ordination. Ordination has three meanings. 1. Leaving the worldly home. 2. Leaving the home of defilements. 3. Leaving the home of the three realms. Regarding these three meanings, if you as a layperson have the intention to ordain and are determined to practice to leave the home of defilements and eventually the home of the three realms, desire realm, form realm, and formless realm, then though your physical form remains that of a layperson, your mind and nature have already ordained. Please carefully consider this very important decision for your practice. This is my sincere advice. I wish you good health, happiness, and diligent practice. Is it a sin to cook meat while practicing vegetarianism? Question. I practice lifelong vegetarianism, but due to circumstances, I have to cook meat dishes and cut meat and fish for cooking. Is this sinful? Answer. Practicing lifelong vegetarianism is a personal vow of the Buddhist practitioner. This is very commendable. However, this does not mean that you should neglect the needs of others in your family. This is a necessary situation because, as a lay practitioner, you are still within the scope of human endeavor and not yet practicing the transcendental path. Therefore, cooking for the family is your responsibility. Cutting meat and fish and cooking meat dishes is not sinful. The sin lies in buying live animals and personally killing them to cook for your family. In this case, you would be committing the sin of taking life. If this is the case, then your practice of lifelong vegetarianism would be pointless, as it would go against your conscience and vow, as well as violate the precept against killing. On the other hand, if you cook without directly harming living beings, you can be at ease that there is no sin in this. 21. Why do monks not bow when their parents die? Question. Why do monks not bow when their parents pass away during the encoffining, cremation, or burial? Does this mean they are being unfilial? Answer. Let me assure you, there is no act of unfilial behavior involved. Before entering the monastery and shaving their heads, monks ask for their parents' permission and receive their consent. During the ordination ceremony, the monk bows to their parents 3 times. These 3 bows express gratitude and serve to repay the deep debt of nurturing and upbringing by the parents. From that point onward, monks no longer bow to their parents. The reason is that monks fear their parents might lose merit. Although their physical form was given by their parents, their spiritual life is nurtured by the Buddha's precepts. The Dharma body and wisdom life is of utmost importance to monks. Therefore, after taking the precepts, monks must strictly observe them, especially after receiving the bhikkhu precepts or higher ordination. Their commitment to maintaining these precepts grows even stronger, leading to an increase in their virtuous conduct. Meanwhile, parents as laypeople typically observe only the 5 precepts, and therefore, in terms of virtuous conduct, they have less merit. According to the Buddha's teachings, parents must respect the Sangha. Even though monks were once their children, they are now part of the Sangha, and thus, parents must show them the same respect as any other monk. Hence, parents would not dare to have monks bow to them. In summary, monks do not bow to their parents to avoid diminishing their parents' merit, not out of any intention of disrespect or unfilial behavior as commonly misunderstood. Moreover, the filial piety of monks is not merely in the form of external rituals like bowing, but in sharing the Buddha's teachings with their parents, encouraging them to practice for peace and liberation. This is the true way of repaying their parents. 22. Can prayers for the deceased continue after 49 days? Question. In our family, when a loved one passes away, we offer prayers for 49 days, chanting the Buddha's name every night in front of the Buddha's altar. After the 49 days, can we continue to offer prayers by chanting the Buddha's name? Answer. It is very commendable for family members to chant sutras and the Buddha's name for their deceased loved ones during the 49-day period. This practice follows the teachings in the scriptures, and it is entirely appropriate. The key is that during the chanting, everyone must be sincerely devoted, offering their whole heart in prayer. This brings benefits both to the person chanting and to the deceased's spirit. According to the Kshitigarbha Earth Store Sutra, after 49 days, known as Chum Thut, the deceased spirit will be reborn according to their karma. If they created much good karma in their lifetime, they will be reborn in a peaceful realm. Conversely, if they created bad karma, they will be reborn in a suffering realm. The nature of their karma determines their rebirth within the 6 realms of samsara. Based on these teachings, Buddhists often perform a memorial service with offerings to the Sangha on the 49th day, seeking the collective merit of the monastic community to aid the deceased in being reborn in a good realm. However, the meaning of the term ko-sio, praying for transcendence, is not limited to the 49-day period. Praying for transcendence means praying for one to move from dark, negative states to bright, peaceful ones. Therefore, we should always pray for transcendence, for ourselves and others to continuously live in peace and happiness. Following this understanding, we should continually pray for ourselves and others to be free from suffering and attain liberation, not just within the 49 days. Hence, after 49 days, it is very beneficial for Buddhists and family members to continue chanting sutras and the Buddha's name. Whether specifically for transcendence or not, Buddhists should chant sutras in the Buddha's name for their own peace in this life and the next. After each chanting session, Buddhists should also pray for the spirit of their loved ones, as well as for all other spirits, and broadly for all sentient beings in the Dharma realm to fully attain Buddhahood. This practice demonstrates the compassionate and altruistic spirit of Buddhists and is very admirable. If one dies unexpectedly while doing good deeds, can they be reborn in a pure land? Question. In this life, I follow the Buddha's teachings by doing good deeds and avoiding evil, such as doing charity and chanting the Buddha's name. However, if one day I die unexpectedly, such as being swept away by a tsunami while swimming in the sea, where will my consciousness go? Will I be reborn in the Pure Land? Answer. Regarding karmic retribution, the Buddhist teachings describe various types of karma. Among them, there are two types of karma that Buddhists often hear about: accumulated karma, nyip, and near-death karma, nyip. Accumulated karma refers to the actions we repeatedly perform, which become habits stored in our subconscious, alivijnana, or storehouse consciousness. If in this life you frequently perform good deeds such as going to the temple, chanting sutras, chanting the Buddha's name, making offerings and giving charity, these good deeds accumulate and are stored in the storehouse consciousness, ensuring they are never lost. The same principle applies to bad karma. Near-death karma refers to the thoughts and actions that arise close to the moment of death. These thoughts and actions can be either wholesome or unwholesome. If, while dying, one's mind is filled with anger or strong attachment to someone or something, and they die with these thoughts, their consciousness will follow these thoughts and be reborn accordingly. This is called following unwholesome near-death karma. Conversely, if, near death, one recalls the Buddha due to a lifelong habit of chanting, even if no one is chanting the Buddha's name at that moment, they can still remember the Buddha and die with that thought, leading to rebirth in the Buddha's realm. This is wholesome near-death karma. If you live a life of good deeds but have unwholesome thoughts at the moment of death, your consciousness will initially follow these unwholesome near-death thoughts. However, the accumulated karma of your good deeds will not be lost. After the near-death karma is exhausted, the accumulated karma will determine your rebirth, bringing you back to enjoy the benefits of the good karma you have created in this life. In summary, as long as you live a life of good deeds and create many merits, even if you die unexpectedly, a sudden, untimely death, your consciousness will follow the path you have set while you are healthy. The key is to cultivate many good deeds while you are alive, so that when you die, you are reborn in a good realm. Just as a tree falls in the direction it has been leaning, your life should lean heavily towards good deeds to ensure you will follow that path when you die. 24. Do I disturb the community and lose merit due to my illness? Whenever I join the community for practice, my old and weak body often gets sick, causing concern and worry for others. Does this mean I am disturbing the community and losing my merit? Answer. Illness is one of the four great sufferings of human beings: birth, aging, illness, and death. It is a common law that no one can avoid. However, the severity of illness depends on each person's karma, leading to varying degrees of affliction. In your case, there is no sin of disturbing the community. Disturbing the community would be if, during rest hours, you do not lie still to sleep, or if you make noise while moving around and disturb others' rest. This would be a violation of the rules and would indeed disturb the community. During practice sessions, everyone needs good health to follow the schedule properly. Disrespecting others' rest times would be a violation of internal regulations and would disturb the community. This is something to be mindful of during both short and long-term retreats organized by the temple to avoid such mistakes. Your situation is different. Illness is beyond your control. Moreover, in the spirit of living harmoniously within a community, mutual support, especially when someone is sick, is necessary. The help provided by others is normal and commendable and does not disturb the community. Therefore, your situation does not incur any sin, and you do not lose merit in your practice. However, as mentioned, illness is a result of one's karma. Particularly, falling ill during practice indicates a heavy karma. You should sincerely repent to lessen this karma. If you maintain regular practice despite your illness, you will not lose any merit. On the contrary, if illness prevents you from following the schedule with the community, you may miss out on some benefits. Nonetheless, if you make an effort to focus on chanting the Buddha's name while bedridden, you will not lose merit. Losing merit occurs when one is healthy but deliberately avoids the practice schedule and does not participate in chanting with the community. This not only results in lost merit, but also incurs the sin of misusing the offerings of donors who work hard to provide meals for the practitioners. Avoiding practice and living disharmoniously with the community are not acceptable behaviors in a practice setting. Rest assured, no one will blame those who are genuinely ill, like yourself. 25. Taking refuge in the Triple Gem prevents rebirth in bad realms. The sutras say that taking refuge in the Buddha prevents one from falling into hell. Taking refuge in the Dharma prevents one from becoming a hungry ghost. And taking refuge in the Sangha prevents one from being reborn as an animal. Does this mean that Buddhists, after taking refuge, will no longer fall into these realms and will be reborn in a joyful realm? If so, why do Buddhists invite monks and nuns to chant sutras for the deceased? Is this contradictory? Answer: there is no contradiction here. The sutra's statements about taking refuge in the Triple Gem do not imply that people will not fall into bad realms only after death. If we understand it that way, it would indeed contradict the meaning of the sutras. The sutras are very clear. To understand the meaning of these statements, we need to grasp the meaning of each phrase. Why does taking refuge in the Buddha prevent one from falling into hell? Taking refuge means returning and relying on, and Buddha means enlightenment and clarity. Thus, taking refuge in the Buddha means returning and relying on an enlightened and clear being. If we only understand this superficially, it is incorrect. For instance, if someone takes refuge in the Triple Gem but continues to create unwholesome karma, such as stealing or killing, and ends up in prison, how can we say they have taken refuge yet still fall into such conditions? This shows that they only superficially took refuge without truly adhering to the precepts or genuinely returning to the Buddha. Someone who truly takes refuge in the Triple Gem, following the teachings of the Buddha, will avoid creating unwholesome karma and thus not end up in prison. This basic level of refuge already brings benefits, not to mention the deeper intrinsic refuge. Therefore, when taking refuge, Buddhists must understand there are two aspects: external refuge and internal refuge. The meaning of taking refuge in the sutras refers to internal refuge. Internal refuge refers to relying on our innate enlightened nature. If one genuinely relies on their clear, enlightened nature, they will not fall into hell. Hell is a dark, suffering state, metaphorically representing our mind overwhelmed by defilements and afflictions. Enlightenment and clarity are the opposite of this state. Hungry ghosts result from extreme greed and stinginess. If one genuinely takes refuge in the Dharma, embodying equality and compassion, they will not fall into the state of a hungry ghost. They will instead help others alleviate suffering, and such a person cannot become a hungry ghost. Animals symbolize ignorance and a lack of moral discernment. If one lives with a clear, enlightened mind, following the truth and without deceit, they will not fall into the animal realm. In summary, a Buddhist who truly takes refuge in the Triple Gem, both externally and internally, will not fall into the three bad realms in this life or the next. After their death, whether there are prayers for their liberation or not is not significant. They have already transcended suffering in this life. Cause and effect are consistent. The result cannot contradict the cause. Therefore, prayers for liberation are merely traditional practices. Having them is good, but not having them does not cause any harm. Understanding this, there is no contradiction at all. 26. Does chanting sutras for the deceased truly liberate them? Question: does chanting sutras for the deceased truly help them attain liberation? Answer: honestly, this is a difficult question to answer definitively. Since we cannot see or know for certain, it is hard to make an absolute statement. However, based on my understanding, it is better for both Buddhists and non-Buddhists to pray for their own liberation while they are still alive. What does it mean to pray for liberation while still alive? The term ko-seo, praying for transcendence, means wishing to overcome all suffering. But merely praying for transcendence without any effort will not lead to overcoming suffering. To transcend suffering, we need to practice diligently, doing good deeds and avoiding evil. Anything harmful to oneself or others should be avoided. For instance, a Buddhist who takes refuge in the Triple Gem and vows to uphold the 5 precepts, sincerely keeping them, is already on the path to liberation in this life, let alone the next. Conversely, if one continually engages in harmful actions, they cannot avoid suffering's consequences. People driven by greed or anger may commit crimes like robbery or murder. Others might succumb to gambling, drinking, or drug addiction, leading to numerous offenses and legal punishment, such as beatings, imprisonment, or worse. How can we expect someone who continually commits harmful actions to be liberated through prayer alone? It is unrealistic to think one person can eat for another to feel full, or study for another to gain knowledge. Such beliefs go against the law of cause and effect. Similarly, if someone commits a crime and is imprisoned, praying all day for their absolution will not free them. It is only when the individual repents and shows genuine improvement that they may be considered for release. Prayers might encourage them to change their ways, but they do not possess the power to absolve sins directly. Thus, praying for the deceased is merely a supportive act. Ultimately, each individual's suffering or happiness is determined by their actions. Understanding this, Buddhists should not rely solely on monks and nuns to chant sutras for liberation. In reality, monks and nuns also need to seek their own liberation. When they chant, it is often more about tradition than a guaranteed path to liberation. Without direct knowledge, no one can make such claims. In summary, everyone must strive to practice diligently and not rely solely on anyone, not even the Buddha or Bodhisattvas, to save them with supernatural powers. These enlightened beings guide us through their teachings in the sutras. By following and practicing these teachings, we can save ourselves. This is the true path to liberation and the proper understanding of praying for transcendence. Otherwise, we will continue to suffer endlessly in the cycle of samsara. Everyone is encouraged to reflect on this carefully. 27 Difference between cultivating merit and cultivating wisdom. Question: can you explain the difference between cultivating merit and cultivating wisdom? Answer: cultivating merit and cultivating wisdom differ in both intention and outcome. Difference in intention. Cultivating merit. When we see a person in poverty and feel compassion, we seek to help them. This leads us to give them money, goods, etc. to ensure they have food and warmth. This intention to help others and provide for their material needs is the intention of cultivating merit. Cultivating wisdom. When we think of going to the temple to learn and hear the Buddhist teachings, we immediately take action. Upon reaching the temple, we attend classes to listen to the teachings from monks. We listen attentively to each word, contemplate them carefully, and apply them in our lives for personal benefit. This intention to learn the Dharma and enhance our wisdom is the intention of cultivating wisdom. Thus, the two intentions differ. One seeks to help others for the sake of gaining merit, while the other seeks to learn the true Dharma to enhance our intellect and clarity. Difference in outcome. Cultivating merit. The result of giving and making offerings is the enjoyment of wealth and happiness. Cultivating wisdom. The result of learning through the three methods, listening, van huet, contemplating, tu huet, and practicing, tu huet, is the attainment of clear and profound wisdom. Therefore, cultivating merit arises from compassion, as we help others out of love and kindness. On the other hand, cultivating wisdom arises from rationality, discerning between right and wrong, true and false. In the Buddhist teachings, it is stated that a Buddhist should diligently cultivate both. Perfecting both merit and wisdom is the way to become a Buddha. We should not focus solely on one side. Overemphasizing one aspect without the other not only fails to bring beneficial results, but can also cause harm. Compassion without accompanying wisdom can become blind, while wisdom without compassion is dry and unhelpful. Thus, Buddhists should strive to cultivate both merit and wisdom. 28. Is impermanence a pessimistic doctrine? Question: is impermanence a pessimistic doctrine? Answer: impermanence is not a pessimistic doctrine. On the contrary, it is an optimistic one. Why is that? Because everything in this world changes due to impermanence, which allows for constant renewal. Just like a flowing stream which never remains in one place, this change leads to societal progress. If everything remained static, life would be exceedingly dull, and perhaps no one would desire to live. Consider planting a bonsai tree. If the tree did not undergo any transformation, how could it become beautiful? No matter how much care we provide, it would never change. Similarly, the clear, refreshing water remains so because it continuously flows, washing away dirt and debris, preventing stagnation and filth. Another example is the daily digestion of food. Without impermanence, how could food be digested? If food remained unchanged, how could we survive? In summary, life's constant renewal and interest are thanks to impermanence. Understanding this, we should wisely use impermanence to continually renew our body and mind towards a positive direction, enhancing our lives. This is a wise attitude, always optimistic and full of love for life. Thus, the principle of impermanence naturally eliminates outdated aspects incompatible with the advancing civilization of humanity, which evolves daily. 29. The issue of true faith and superstition. Question: why do some Buddhists who have taken refuge in the Triple Gem and accepted the 5 precepts still believe in fortune-telling, auspicious and inauspicious days, divination, and star worship? Does this contradict the law of cause and effect? Answer: yes, it completely contradicts the law of cause and effect. This is an issue that many Buddhists face. Some people, even after taking refuge in the Triple Gem, still hold on to deep-seated superstitions and find it difficult to let go of these beliefs. Their faith in the Dharma is very shallow, and they do not study the Buddhist teachings in depth. Consequently, their belief in the principles of cause and effect is not firm. This is a deeply concerning phenomenon. Many people take refuge in the Triple Gem, but only a few truly believe in and understand the Dharma. Hence, superstition persists. This problem is not only present among lay people, but also within temples, where even monks and nuns engage in practices like checking auspicious days, star signs, and divination. If even the clergy engage in such practices, it is no wonder that lay people do the same. This issue is not new but has existed for a long time. In Vietnam today, superstition is widespread and extremely harmful, despite the efforts of sincere practitioners to urge Buddhists to avoid blind faith. Misplaced faith can cause significant harm, affecting not only the present life, but also future lives. Therefore, Buddhists need to build their faith on the foundation of wisdom. In other words, Buddhists should use the light of wisdom to guide and direct their faith. Only then can they hope to escape the cycle of suffering. In the Sutra of the Final Teachings, Dijao Kin, before entering nirvana, the Buddha advised the monks not to engage in fortune-telling, star worship, or predictions of prosperity and decline. Despite these admonitions, such practices have continued, and it is uncertain when they will truly end. To reiterate, believing in such practices completely contradicts the law of cause and effect. True faith and superstition are as different as day and night. Where there is light, there is no darkness. Where there is wrong view, there is no right view. Where there is superstition, there is no true faith. Buddhism is the path of enlightenment, advocating right view and true faith. Buddhism does not accept wrong views or superstition. Whether lay or ordained, Buddhists have a duty to uphold the principles of cause and effect and guide others on the path to enlightenment as taught by the Buddha. Straying from this path means abandoning the role of promoting the true Dharma, which is a serious offense against the Triple Gem. In the book, The First Steps to Buddhism by Venerable Thich Thanh Tu, in the section on superstition and true faith, the Venerable writes in the conclusion, Buddhism advocates true faith and never accepts superstition. Due to misunderstandings, people have integrated worldly customs into Buddhism, leading to the misconception that Buddhism is superstitious. The essence of Buddhism is wisdom and enlightenment, which cannot accommodate superstition. If people see signs of superstition in temples today and hastily judge Buddhism as superstitious, it is a grave misunderstanding. All Buddhist scriptures do not mention these superstitious practices. They are the result of some people following customs and not understanding the Dharma. True students of Buddhism must courageously eliminate these erroneous customs, decisively eradicating all corrupt practices that undermine the value of Buddhism. Although removing these practices might cause some personal loss, we must remain resolute for the sake of the true Dharma, to guide people away from delusion, and not for fear of losing followers. Only then can we truly deserve to be leaders of the faithful, and not be ashamed as members of the Sangha. 30. Should women chant and repent during menstruation? Question: during menstruation, are we women allowed to chant sutras and perform repentance rituals as usual? Answer: there is absolutely no obstacle to this. In the Buddha's Vinaya, monastic discipline, there is no prohibition against this practice. Menstruation is a natural physiological phenomenon for women, something that no one wishes for but is an unavoidable natural law. Given this, why should Buddhists worry? You should not be anxious or fearful. The only concern should be if you use this as an excuse to neglect your practice, which would be regrettable. Other than that, there is nothing to be concerned about. If someone argues that menstrual blood is impure, let's consider that all the other excretions from the human body are not clean either. The Buddha taught that this body is inherently impure. Should we abandon our practice due to this impurity? Furthermore, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas do not have the same discriminating mind regarding cleanliness and impurity as ordinary people do. They always encourage us to be diligent in our practice. Therefore, for Buddhists, time for practice is as precious as gold and silver. Every moment should be dedicated to practice, whether according to a fixed schedule or not. Each day, our body ages and weakens. Illness and death can come at any time without warning. How many of us can foresee this? So why not recognize the impermanence of life and strive to practice diligently? When you practice chanting and repentance sincerely, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are filled with compassion for you and would never criticize any perceived impurity. In Buddhism, external impurity is insignificant compared to the internal impurity of our hearts and minds. The defilements of greed, anger, and ignorance are the true impurities we should be concerned with and strive to eliminate. This does not mean we disregard external appearances, but we must understand what is most important, what is primary and what is secondary. The internal defilements are the most critical to address. In conclusion, you can be at ease and continue your chanting and repentance practices as usual during menstruation. There is no sin in this. The key is to maintain your regular practice. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will be pleased and praise your diligent efforts, wishing you continuous joy and diligence on your path of practice, and may you quickly attain the fruits of your practice. 31. Can we eat eggs while observing a vegetarian diet? Question. During vegetarian days, can lay Buddhists eat eggs? I've heard that unfertilized eggs are permissible. If we eat them, do we incur any sin? Answer. In Mahayana Buddhism, the practice of vegetarianism is advocated due to compassion and the desire to avoid the karmic consequences of causing harm. It is not about taking lives to sustain our own. If we say that practicing vegetarianism is equivalent to practicing Buddhism, this is not entirely accurate. Theravada Buddhism, the original teachings, does not prescribe specific vegetarian days. Even the Buddha and his arahant disciples in the past did not adhere to a vegetarian diet. They would carry their alms bowls and eat whatever was offered. Buddhists in India during the Buddha's time consumed meat. So does that mean they were not practicing Buddhism? If they were not practicing, how did they attain Buddhahood or arahantship? However, they did not kill with their own hands. Buddhists need to understand the first precept clearly. The Buddha taught that we should not kill, especially not humans, as human life is much more significant than that of other beings. This is consistent with worldly laws, where killing a person is a grave crime, punishable by imprisonment. In contrast, killing animals is not regarded with the same severity. Therefore, not killing humans is fundamental, and from there, we extend this practice to other living beings, avoiding harm as much as possible. Absolute adherence is nearly impossible, even for monks and nuns. For example, when monks and nuns fall ill, they need to take medicine, which kills many bacteria. Thus, no one can completely avoid killing. Regarding your question, as a lay Buddhist, consuming unfertilized eggs on vegetarian days is not sinful. Unfertilized eggs do not contain a germ of life and therefore do not involve killing. Killing a living germ would indeed be cruel. This guideline is particularly for those practicing higher paths toward enlightenment. Lay Buddhists, who observe the 5 precepts, find that eating unfertilized eggs is not sinful. For Taoist practitioners, consuming eggs is prohibited because they seek to keep their bodies light and pure. In contrast, Buddhist practice does not have this restriction. According to the Buddhist teachings, only actions that terminate a potential life are considered sinful. Since unfertilized eggs do not have the potential for life, eating them does not constitute killing. If you still have doubts, You can listen to the recordings of Venerable Tichtentu's teachings on the 33 Zen patriarchs of India and China at the Tongchiu Zen Monastery. In these teachings, a similar question was asked, and Venerable Tentu affirmed that eating unfertilized eggs is not sinful. You can be at ease and eat them if you like. Just be cautious of overconsumption, which might lead to health issues. 32. Offering a roasted pig as a Thanksgiving gift, is it sinful? Question. I vowed to the deities that if my son got a job in Australia, I would offer a roasted pig as a Thanksgiving gift. Now that my son has secured the job, I no longer want to offer a roasted pig after hearing teachings about the sin of killing. Can I offer fruits instead? Answer. Faith is a valuable trait for a Buddhist. However, it is crucial to place your faith correctly. Specifically, Buddhists must have true faith, chantin. A Buddhist who does not deeply believe in the law of cause and effect is not a true Buddhist. Instead of believing in cause and effect, some Buddhists place their faith in spirits. Believing in the protection of spirits, you prayed for your son to get a job. When you made this vow, you promised to offer a roasted pig as a Thanksgiving gift. After your son got the job, you changed your mind because you fear committing the sin of killing. Aren't you afraid that the spirits will be angry because you have deceived them? This means you lack sincerity. I will answer this in two parts for you to consider and decide. First, if you offer a roasted pig as promised because you believe in it, you must accept the sin of killing. If I advise you to offer fruits instead and nothing happens to your son or family afterward, then everything is fine. But if something unfortunate happens, since cause and effect are unpredictable, you might blame me for advising you to make a fruit offering. Despite taking refuge in the Triple Gem, your faith is different. You lack deep faith in the Triple Gem. When you take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the Buddha clearly taught, after taking refuge in the Buddha, you should not take refuge in gods, spirits, ghosts, or objects. You valued gods and spirits over the Buddha, which is why you prayed to them. If we delve deeper into cause and effect, your son's job result was not due to your prayers but to his own karma. If prayers were necessary to get a job, then everyone in Australia who has a job must have prayed and offered roasted pigs. Why do people who do not pray still get jobs? It is due to their ability and effort. Job opportunities in Australia depend on one's education, skills, and health, and employers decide based on these factors. If your son's job performance displeases his employer, he might lose his job and become unemployed again. Will you continue to pray and offer roasted pigs for another job? If you have 10 children, will you pray and offer a roasted pig for each one to get a job? If you believe this, I have nothing more to say. Belief should be rational. A Buddhist cannot believe blindly. Use your wisdom to consider this issue. Second, if you fear committing the sin of killing and the resulting karmic consequences, you should offer fruits instead. Offering or not offering depends on your belief. If you believe, it works. If not, it doesn't. There is an old saying, it is effective if I believe, ineffective if I do not. Have you ever seen a deity come to accept the offerings, or are they consumed by your family? Everyone enjoys the food, but you alone bear the sin. Are you willing to accept this? Firmly believe in cause and effect. Whatever happens, good or bad, is due to our own actions. If we created good karma in the past, we reap good results in this life. Conversely, if we created bad karma in past lives, we must accept the bad results now. Cause and effect span many lifetimes. A Buddhist with strong faith in cause and effect has nothing to fear. We bear the consequences of our actions without blaming anyone. I advise you to wisely consider this issue. If you have faith in the Triple Gem and cause and effect, do not listen to anyone else. No one else can decide your fate. It is determined by your actions. Follow the Buddha's teachings and strive to do good. Good actions yield good results. Cause and effect never fail, but their manifestation can vary in timing. In summary, my advice is based on the law of cause and effect. It is up to you to decide. 33. Can I chant sutras without a Buddha altar? Question. Dear Venerable, my house does not have a Buddha altar, only an ancestor altar. Although I deeply believe in the Buddha Dharma, due to space constraints, I cannot set up a Buddha altar. Can I still chant sutras? Answer: yes, you certainly can. There is no obstacle to this. However, I would like to offer some broader insights on this matter. From the perspective of ritual practice, it is ideal for a Buddhist to have a Buddha altar in a clean and respectful place when chanting and performing repentance rituals. Even though the Buddha and Bodhisattva are represented by statues, Buddhists should always honor and revere them. We honor the Buddha because we remember his great teachings. The Buddha is fully enlightened, and even though he entered nirvana a long time ago, he left us an invaluable treasury of scriptures. Thanks to these scriptures, we can study and understand the path to escape the cycle of birth and death. Thus, his great kindness is immeasurable. Therefore, after taking refuge in the Triple Gem, we should honor the Buddha's statue at home to remind ourselves to follow his enlightened example. By seeing his image daily, we are inspired to practice according to his teachings. This helps us bring his teachings into our daily lives. Worshipping in this way brings true benefits and aligns with the meaning of honoring the Buddha. On the other hand, if we worship the Buddha and Bodhisattvas with the hope that they will grant us blessings, remove calamities, or protect our families, this is a significant mistake. This approach treats the Buddha and Bodhisattvas like deities. Worse, some people even think of offerings as bribery for blessings. If things do not go as hoped, they might think the Buddha or Bodhisattvas are not effective. The Buddha and Bodhisattvas are enlightened beings, and treating them like deities is a grave misunderstanding. Therefore, Buddhists need to understand the true meaning of honoring the Buddha and Bodhisattvas to avoid serious mistakes. Why do you honor your ancestors? Is it because you remember their deep kindness in giving birth and raising you? If we honor our parents and ancestors for this reason, how much more should we honor the Buddha, who gave us the wisdom to achieve enlightenment and liberation from suffering? Therefore, having a Buddha altar in a Buddhist home is essential. Given your space constraints, you can still show respect by placing a Buddha image above your ancestor altar. This way, you can honor both your ancestors and the Buddha. It is not disrespectful. On the contrary, it shows your good heart and filial piety. When you chant and perform rituals, seeing the Buddha's image increases your faith and devotion. This makes your practice more sincere and earnest, bringing peace and joy to your mind. This is crucial for your spiritual life. From an external perspective, having a Buddha image enhances your practice. Internally, focusing on your mind and preventing afflictions from arising is like honoring the Buddha within you. Each person has a Buddha within. Worshipping an external Buddha helps illuminate the Buddha within. This is the true integration of form and essence. Therefore, I sincerely advise you to honor the Buddha in both ways. This will help you find liberation from suffering. Simply honoring an external Buddha without recognizing the internal Buddha is not fully understanding the meaning of worship. 34. Losing family happiness due to a quick temper. Question: Dear Venerable, in the past I had a very bad temper and often argued and fought with my husband. He couldn't bear my aggressive and rude behavior, so he left me and our 3 children. Now that my children are grown, I deeply regret my actions and constantly feel guilty for the harm I caused. Is there any way for me to lessen my guilt? Answer: I deeply sympathize with your situation. A quick temper is a manifestation of anger, which is one of the 6 fundamental afflictions: greed, anger, ignorance, arrogance, doubt, and wrong views. More specifically, anger is one of the 3 poisons: greed, anger, and ignorance. These afflictions are called fundamental because they have deep roots that are difficult to eradicate. They have existed not just in this lifetime, but for countless past lives. Humanity suffers and is constantly uneasy because of these afflictions. Everyone has these afflictions to some extent. However, their intensity and manifestation depend on each person's practice and cultivation. This practice spans not just this life, but many previous lives. Therefore, when they manifest, they can vary in intensity and strength. If someone has deep-seated anger and does not work on cultivating their mind, their temper will be very strong and fierce. They might commit severe acts such as murder and other grave crimes. Conversely, those who diligently practice can somewhat reduce the intensity of their anger. Based on your account, your anger seems to have been quite intense, leading to severe temper outbursts. Although anger has deep roots, its nature is ultimately insubstantial. Because it is not real, we can transform it through practice. As Venerable Yongja Xuanjue said in the Song of Enlightenment, the three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance are like bubbles in water, fleeting and insubstantial. If they were real, how could we transform them through practice? And how could anyone attain Buddhahood? Anger arises depending on circumstances. When faced with adverse situations, it manifests. Normally, we do not recognize it. Therefore, Yogacara Buddhism refers to these as habitual patterns. Although they are not real, when they manifest and we act upon them, the consequences can be severe, potentially causing great harm or even death. Their power is formidable. Even if the manifestation is less intense, it can still lead to arguments and conflicts. In your case, your anger led to verbal abuse, which disrupted the harmony and happiness in your family, ultimately causing your husband to leave. This indicates that he could no longer endure your behavior and had to leave to find peace. Given that men are typically the pillars of the family and usually more patient, his departure indicates the severity of the situation. Now that you realize your mistakes and feel remorseful, this is a good sign. The Buddha taught that no one is perfect and everyone makes mistakes. Confucius also said, "No one is without faults." As humans living in ignorance, we inevitably create some unwholesome karma. However, if we recognize our mistakes and sincerely repent, those mistakes can eventually be eradicated. In your case, based on the law of cause and effect, you will experience the consequences of your actions to some degree. The intensity of these consequences depends on your current actions. If you now practice diligently, do good deeds, and sincerely repent, the severity of your past mistakes will diminish, turning heavy karma into lighter karma. This is why it is said that practice transforms karma. To specifically address your situation, the best solution is to sincerely apologize to your husband for the harm you caused, if he is still alive. If he forgives you, your guilt will be alleviated. If he does not forgive you, you can still find peace knowing that you have acknowledged your mistakes and sought forgiveness. I advise you to be courageous and sincere in seeking his forgiveness. Admitting mistakes and apologizing is a normal part of life and should not cause you to feel ashamed or inferior. Based on what I have shared, please be at ease and do not carry the burden of guilt. This burden can be a significant obstacle in your practice. Let go of the past and focus on living in the present moment. I sincerely advise you to devote yourself to chanting the Buddha's name, reciting sutras, repenting, and doing good deeds. This will help lighten your karma and bring about the best possible outcomes. I wish you peace, good health, and diligence on your path of practice. 35. Anxiety over living alone but finding it difficult to deal with dishonesty in social interactions. Question: Dear Venerable, I have 3 concerns that have been troubling me for a long time. 1. I currently live alone, and I am very worried that if I fall ill, no one will know or take care of me. I am over 50 years old, and even if I study, no one will hire me. 2. I have a quick temper, and I dislike being around people who are deceitful and superficial. This often leads to conflicts, even with close relatives. 3. I am very afraid of committing the sin of killing, and I want to practice lifelong vegetarianism, but I find it difficult to maintain. Could you kindly guide me on how to resolve these issues? Answer: You have raised 3 concerns, and I will address each one in turn to offer some insights. I hope this will help alleviate some of your worries. 1. Living alone and worrying about illness. It is understandable to be concerned about living alone, especially when considering the possibility of illness without anyone to assist. However, the Buddha teaches us to distinguish between worthy and unworthy worries. What are worthy worries? They involve whether we are cultivating enough merit and virtue. Are we diligently practicing mindfulness, performing good deeds, and improving our character daily? Are we helping others wholeheartedly? Essentially, are we preparing adequately for the inevitable day we leave this world? This journey is truly solitary, and we cannot take any material wealth with us, only our good and bad karma. Therefore, focusing on cultivating merit now is the most important concern. Unworthy worries include natural aspects of human life such as birth, aging, sickness, and death. These are inevitable and unavoidable. No matter how much we worry, they will still happen. Having a body means we will experience illness. This is a natural law. Living in a developed country like Australia provides various conveniences in social services, especially for seniors living alone. You have access to medical assistance and emergency services by simply making a phone call. Additionally, healthcare professionals and caregivers often provide compassionate and dedicated care. Therefore, there is no need to overly worry about this aspect. 2. Quick temper and dislike of dishonesty. Everyone is born with their own karma, and no two people are exactly alike, not even siblings. Each person's physical and mental characteristics differ due to different environments and experiences. Living in society means we have mutual dependencies. Even if we wish to isolate ourselves, it is practically impossible. We depend on others for our clothes, food, and medicine. Therefore, we should feel gratitude and respect for those who contribute to our well-being, rather than harboring animosity. Recognize that everyone has flaws. While it is your choice to avoid those you perceive as deceitful, be mindful not to criticize others too harshly. Nobody is perfect, and only the Buddha is free of flaws. By understanding the diverse karmic backgrounds of people, you can develop a more open and compassionate outlook. While it is wise to choose your companions carefully, maintain a spirit of kindness and avoid harsh judgments. It's important to build a network of supportive friends, even if you have a few close ones to assist in times of need. While you may prefer solitude, having reliable friends is essential. Treat others well, and you will find that help and kindness are reciprocated. 3. Desire to practice vegetarianism. Your inclination towards eating meat suggests a strong, habitual tendency. Although you wish to practice vegetarianism, your taste buds and cravings challenge this intention. Practicing vegetarianism is difficult for many, and it is understandable. As a lay Buddhist, you can vow to observe vegetarian days as you are able. The Buddha does not force anyone to adhere strictly to a vegetarian diet. However, it is crucial to avoid directly killing animals for food, as this constitutes the sin of killing. If you buy meat from the market, you are not directly involved in the act of killing. Maintaining periodic vegetarian days is a good practice. Gradually, you may find that your preference for meat diminishes, making it easier to practice lifelong vegetarianism. Remember the verse, thinking it delicious, nourishing the body, unaware of the karmic debts it incurs. Transitioning to a vegetarian diet should be gradual and compassionate towards yourself. Continue to practice mindfulness, chant, and perform good deeds to reduce your karmic burdens. I wish you joy and diligence in your practice, and may you find peace and health on your path. 36. The issue of mourning for parents. Question. Dear Venerable, if my parents pass away in Vietnam but due to unavoidable circumstances I cannot return to mourn them, can I go to a temple here to perform the mourning ceremony and release the mourning period after 49 days? Is this acceptable? Answer. Yes, it is perfectly acceptable. If due to special circumstances beyond your control you cannot return to Vietnam to mourn your parents, you and your relatives can go to a temple and ask the monks and nuns to perform the mourning ceremony. This situation is neither unfilial nor problematic. It is important to note that the practice of mourning is a tradition that originates from Confucianism. Buddhism does not specifically address the wearing of mourning clothes. Mourning is a way to express the filial piety of children. Our ancestors believed that death should be treated with the same respect as life. How we treated our parents and relatives while they were alive should continue after their death. Therefore, mourning is a formal way to express sorrow and remembrance for the deceased. In the past, the mourning period was very long, often lasting until the great memorial ceremony, which was held after 2 years, or the small memorial held after 1 year. Traditionally, children and grandchildren had to mourn for their parents and grandparents for 2 years before officially ending the mourning period. However, this practice has been shortened over time due to various inconveniences and practicalities, especially concerning matters like marriage and business. Nowadays, it is common for families to perform the mourning release ceremony after 49 days. Therefore, you can go to the temple and ask the venerable monks and nuns to perform both the mourning and mourning release ceremonies. This is entirely acceptable given the circumstances. In truth, no one desires to be in such a situation. Parents and grandparents are the closest relatives in one's life. and ideally one should return to mourn them. However, due to unavoidable circumstances, this may not be possible. Rest assured, no one will blame you when the situation is beyond your control. 37. The difference between intellectual knowledge and wisdom. Question: Dear Venerable, I have been wondering about the difference between intellectual knowledge and wisdom. Why does Buddhism emphasize wisdom rather than intellectual knowledge? Could you please explain this clearly for us? Answer: According to Buddhism, there is a distinction between intellectual knowledge and wisdom when viewed from the perspective of perception, but not when viewed from the perspective of essence. Knowledge does not exist apart from wisdom, just as waves do not exist apart from water. However, waves are not the same as water, even though water is inherently present in waves. Therefore, the relationship between waves and water cannot be strictly defined as either one or two. According to the principle of non-duality, waves are water and water is waves. Saying they are one is incorrect, and saying they are two is also incorrect. The same applies to knowledge and wisdom. From the perspective of perception, it is called knowledge. From the perspective of essence, it is called wisdom. In other words, knowledge is the function, while wisdom is the essence. However, in common usage, the meanings of intellectual knowledge and wisdom in Buddhism are quite different. Intellectual knowledge, as commonly understood, is knowledge accumulated through experience. It is acquired through learning and absorbing information from one's surroundings, such as family, school, and society. In Buddhism, this is referred to as learned knowledge, which means knowledge borrowed from external sources. In contrast, wisdom is also called innate knowledge, meaning it is not borrowed from external sources but is inherently present. The reason it does not manifest is due to the obstruction of afflictions. When these afflictions are removed, wisdom naturally manifests. For example, the nature of a mirror is to reflect clearly, but if it is covered in dust, its clarity is obscured. The nature of the moon is to shine brightly, but if it is covered by clouds, its light cannot be seen. When the dust is removed, the mirror shines. When the clouds disperse, the moon appears. Similarly, when the clouds of ignorance and afflictions are gone, the sun of wisdom will shine forth. Due to this characteristic, Buddhism refers to it as prajna wisdom or Buddha nature. This distinguishes it from the kind of wisdom that people commonly refer to in the world. In summary, intellectual knowledge is still within the realm of discrimination and attachment, derived from accumulated external experiences. This is considered conditioned knowledge or worldly intelligence. In contrast, wisdom is the innate knowledge that does not rely on external sources. When this wisdom shines fully, unobstructed by ignorance and afflictions, it is called ultimate wisdom, which is the attainment of Buddhahood. 38. What is transforming karma? Question: Dear Venerable, I often hear that practicing Buddhism means transforming karma, but I don't understand how to transform karma. And what is karma that needs to be transformed? Please explain this to us. Answer: The concept of karma in Buddhism is very profound and extensive. Here, I will provide a brief explanation. Karma, originally a Sanskrit word, means action. It refers to actions that are repeated many times until they become a habit, hence called karma. For example, the habit of smoking, gambling, or drinking. When a person first smokes or uses drugs, it may not seem problematic, but repeated actions lead to addiction. Once addicted, it becomes difficult to stop as it exerts a powerful influence, controlling our actions. There is a saying, at first, habits are like a visitor passing by, then they become a close friend, and finally they become a difficult master. Once habits become a demanding master, it is hard to resist their commands, leading to harmful consequences. Karma is also used to refer to different professions. For instance, teachers working together are called colleagues. Any profession where people work together, they are referred to as colleagues. Karma can be of various types, but broadly there are two main types: good karma and bad karma. Karma is created through body, speech, and mind. Among these, the mind is the most important. Mental karma involves thoughts and discernments. It is the main driver of karma. When the mind thinks good thoughts, it leads to good speech and good actions. Conversely, when it thinks bad thoughts, it leads to harmful speech and actions. These three forms of karma create heaven or hell on earth. All human suffering and happiness, whether individual, collective, or societal, stem from these forms of karma. Therefore, Buddhism places great emphasis on these three karmas. The practice of a Buddhist focuses on transforming these three karmas from bad to good. For example, if previously we engaged in bad thoughts, speech, and actions, such as cursing or committing crimes, upon practicing Buddhism, we resolve to stop these negative behaviors. This is how we transform karma. If someone used to indulge in addictive behaviors but now recognizes their harm and decides to quit, that is transforming the karma of addiction into freedom from addiction. This transformation leads to a happier and more liberated life. An individual who transforms their karma benefits both now and in the future. A family that transforms bad karma into good karma will experience harmony and happiness. This positive transformation extends to society, leading to order, peace, and general well-being, which is the goal of a Buddhist practitioner. In summary, practicing Buddhism means transforming karma. If karma could not be transformed, there would be no purpose in practicing. Transforming means changing bad to good, evil to virtuous, false to true, and so on. The term transform is used instead of fix because fix has a broader meaning and is not as profound as transform. The word transform implies an internal change rather than an external one, shifting from bad intentions to good ones. Therefore, Buddhism emphasizes transforming karma rather than fixing it. May we all recognize the suffering of the present and future and strive to cultivate good karma in body, speech, and mind. By doing so, we ensure a life free from suffering. As the sutra says, when the three karmas are pure, one can attain the Western Pure Land, meaning a state free from suffering. 39. The issue of soul and karmic retribution. Question. Dear Venerable, I have heard people say that after death, a person's soul continues to exist and then reincarnates, and that there is no karmic retribution. Is this correct? Please explain this clearly for us. Answer. The question of whether a soul exists after death and where it goes is very complex and difficult to prove. Different religions and beliefs have various explanations based on their doctrines and the faith of their followers. However, as Buddhists, when placing our faith in something, we should use reason and carefully examine the evidence, rather than blindly believing what others say, especially those who speak without a solid basis or belief. It is best to be cautious when listening to others. To address the question, providing a detailed explanation would be quite lengthy. Here I will present a brief perspective based on Buddhist views. Whether you choose to believe or not is up to each individual. The idea that after death, a person's soul continues to exist and reincarnates without any karmic retribution is not acceptable in Buddhism. Buddhism does not accept the existence of an eternal soul. This belief is considered an external view. In ancient times, during the Buddha's era, there were two external views. One was eternalism and the other was annihilationism. The eternalist view holds that a person's soul remains eternal, and even if they commit grave sins, they will be reborn as humans. The annihilationist view holds that after death, there is no soul that continues to exist. Everything is completely extinguished. These views were harmful, causing chaos and disrupting social order. Both views deny the concept of karmic retribution. However, we must remember that karma is a universal truth that influences all phenomena. Nothing escapes the law of karma. The Buddha, upon realizing this truth, taught us about it. Based on the law of karma, Buddhism explains the concept of karmic retribution. Whatever actions we perform, whether good or bad, will eventually bear results. Buddhism does not accept the existence of an eternal soul, as it would imply belief in a permanent self, which is an external view. According to Buddhism, everything arises due to causes and conditions. Karmic retribution is also formed through cause and effect. The Buddhist concept of dependent origination, particularly the theory of alaya consciousness, belongs to the Mahayana teachings. The alaya consciousness is the eighth consciousness, which follows the manas consciousness. It is also called the storehouse consciousness, as it stores all seeds of good and bad actions. These seeds, when given the right conditions, manifest in our actions. These seeds are referred to as karmic seeds. The karmic consciousness is the driving force that determines our rebirth in the next life. This is referred to as the cycle of birth and death in the six realms: heaven, human, asura, hell, hungry ghost, and animal. According to the theory of karmic retribution and alaya consciousness in Buddhism, every thought, word, and action we perform is stored in the storehouse consciousness. When the conditions are right, these seeds manifest. An example is a piece of land where different seeds are sown. Initially, we do not see the seeds sprouting, but when it rains and the conditions are right, the seeds sprout according to their type. Similarly, if we accumulate good seeds by doing good deeds and practicing mindfulness, these seeds will lead us to be reborn in favorable conditions to enjoy the results of our good actions. This is known as karmic guidance. Conversely, if we accumulate bad karma, we will experience its negative effects. This is the concept of rebirth according to karma. Karma is a repeated action that becomes a habit, and this habit, when mature, has a strong influence on our rebirth. The term karmic consciousness refers to the alaya consciousness, containing both conditioned and unconditioned seeds. Conditioned seeds lead to various phenomena, while unconditioned seeds can lead to liberation. In summary, the belief that after death, a soul exists and reincarnates without any karmic retribution is incorrect. According to the Buddhist text Kwi-sun Kansaik, the notion of an eternal soul is a misunderstanding. Buddhism teaches that what continues after death is the karmic consciousness, which is influenced by our actions. The belief in an eternal soul that reincarnates without karmic retribution is a view of the one extreme and lacks an understanding of karmic retribution. The idea of no karmic retribution is considered a non-believer's view, which denies the law of karma. Such people are difficult to engage in meaningful dialogue with. The concept of karmic retribution is based on the principle of cause and effect over time. Those who claim there is no karmic retribution may not fully understand karma. It is better to seek understanding than to speak recklessly and invite unnecessary suffering. This is a profoundly important issue and deserves careful consideration. 40. Are destiny and karmic retribution the same or different? Question. Dear Venerable, I am not clear about whether destiny and karmic retribution are the same or different. Could you please clarify this for me? Thank you. Answer. According to Confucianism, every person is born with a predetermined destiny or heavenly mandate. This is why people often joke that even shoes have their destiny. Although it's a joke, it implies that each person's fate is predestined by some higher power. Success or failure, prosperity or decline, honor or disgrace, happiness or suffering in life are all seen as arranged by heaven. Hence, there is the saying, every bite and every sip is preordained. In Buddhism, however, the experiences and conditions that a person must endure are referred to as karmic retribution. Karma refers to the actions we have committed in the past, which now result in the conditions we experience, such as disabilities or illnesses. Karma is the cause we created, and retribution is the effect we must endure. So from a certain perspective, both sides acknowledge the existence of predetermined conditions. The initial differences in people's lives serve as evidence for this. The difference lies in who or what determines these conditions. Confucianism attributes it to predetermined destiny, while Buddhism attributes it to karma created in the past. Although both perspectives accept the existence of preconditions, they use different terms to describe them. One speaks of destiny, while the other speaks of karma. Thus, Confucianism and Buddhism accept this concept similarly. However, if we examine this issue more deeply, we will find significant differences. Regarding the cause and origin, those who believe in destiny or heavenly mandate think that their entire life is unchangeable. If their destiny is to be poor, they will remain poor forever without any hope of improvement. Conversely, if they are destined to be wealthy, they will remain so. This belief forces people to resign themselves to a predetermined fate, never able to escape it. If everything is predetermined, then life's meaning and value are diminished. Happiness or suffering is merely a matter of fate, leading people to passively accept their conditions. This perspective renders individuals powerless and irresponsible, leaving their fate to some unknown, uncontrollable force, which is unacceptable in a practical, scientific world. In terms of cause and origin, those who believe in destiny do not know the exact cause and merely attribute everything to fate. Buddhism, with its doctrine of karmic retribution, does not accept this view. According to Buddhism, everything that happens has a cause, whether small or large, visible or invisible. There is no such thing as something happening without a reason. According to karmic retribution, our current suffering or happiness results from actions we performed in past lives. No external force determines this for us. We are responsible for our own actions and their consequences. If, in this life, we experience poverty and suffering, it is because we did not practice generosity in past lives. Seeing others in need, we turned away without compassion. This is just one example, and similar reasoning can apply to countless other situations. Regarding the experience and transformation of destiny and karma, those who believe in destiny think it cannot be changed, especially if it is decreed by heaven. They believe that one should not go against heaven's will. Buddhists, on the other hand, believe karma can be transformed. This is why it is said that practice is to transform karma. For instance, someone who is quick-tempered can transform and reduce their anger through practice. Similarly, someone addicted to gambling, drugs, or alcohol can reform, giving up their harmful habits and leading a happier, more fulfilling life for themselves and their family. Thus, karma can be transformed from bad to good, unlike a fixed destiny. If society were to believe in an unchangeable destiny, it would stifle progress and innovation. Individual, family, and societal advancement would be impossible if everyone resigned themselves to fate. Those who believe in fixed destiny might just passively wait for death, unable to make any positive changes. In summary, destiny and karmic retribution are fundamentally different. They only share the idea of pre-existing conditions, but beyond that, they are distinct. To better understand this comparison, destiny is vague and uncertain, while karmic retribution is clear and practical. The doctrine of destiny leads people to be irresponsible for their actions, while karmic retribution teaches individuals to take responsibility for the consequences of their actions. Destiny makes people passive and reckless, while karmic retribution builds active, positive, and creative individuals. Destiny makes people weak and resigned, while karmic retribution encourages effort, courage, and progress. Destiny is suitable for feudal times, while karmic retribution fits democratic and free societies. Applying the doctrine of karmic retribution in life allows us to stand tall and fully empowered to create our destiny and the world around us. This comparison illustrates the differences between the concepts of destiny and karmic retribution, emphasizing the active and responsible approach of karmic retribution over the passive acceptance of destiny. 41. Assisting the dying with recitation. Question: I have heard about recitation for rebirth, especially for those who are dying, but I don't know how to properly assist with recitation. How can one ensure that the deceased benefits and achieves rebirth? Could you please explain this to us? Answer: This is a very important issue for practitioners of the Pure Land school who recite the Buddha's name for rebirth. For those whose Pure Land practice is well established, who have attained samadhi through recitation, and are already experiencing the presence of holy realms, recitation assistance is no longer necessary. They are already reborn in this very life. However, in this degenerate age, such practitioners are extremely rare, and only those with exceptional faculties and wisdom can achieve this. For everyone else, assistance with recitation at the time of death is crucial, and we should thoroughly understand this matter. At the end of one's life, there are 3 possible paths: ascending to the holy path and being reborn in the Pure Land immediately, a path reserved for the exceptionally virtuous, entering the good realms, and entering the evil realms. The path to the good realms, though pleasant, still involves the cycle of rebirth in the human or heavenly realms. The third path leads to the evil realms, a path of immense suffering that no one wishes to tread. However, if one has created evil karma in this life, how can they avoid this path? For these latter 2 groups, recitation assistance at the time of death is extremely important. But how should recitation assistance be conducted to ensure that the dying person benefits and achieves rebirth? This is what those assisting must understand. Recitation assistance means helping the dying maintain right mindfulness. Right mindfulness means remembering the Buddha. Assisting them in remembering the Buddha prevents them from clinging to worldly affairs, which disrupts their right mindfulness and hinders their rebirth. The person assisting is like a buoy that the dying person clings to. Why? Because at this time, the dying person is in great pain, especially if they suffer from a terminal illness like cancer. The excruciating pain causes their mind to scatter. Even if they usually have a solid practice of reciting the Buddha's name, they may become distracted due to the intense pain. Thus, they need someone else to assist with recitation. At this time, the dying person loses all self-control, their mind is chaotic, and it's hard for them to focus on the Buddha's name. The assistant must help them concentrate on right mindfulness by sincerely reciting the Buddha's name. It is important to remember that even when a person has just stopped breathing, they are not truly dead, as their consciousness has not completely left the body for at least 2 hours. During this time, continuous recitation is still crucial. Whether a person achieves rebirth depends not only on their usual practice, but significantly on the assistance they receive at the time of death. Therefore, family members and close relatives play a crucial role. If they do not know how to assist properly, they might cause more distress, leading to adverse outcomes for the dying person. For those who truly love their dying relative, they should sincerely recite the Buddha's name with folded hands. Avoid any behavior or words that might upset the dying person, as they are very sensitive and can easily become angry or upset. The best approach during this critical time is to have at least one knowledgeable person guide the process, ensuring that all actions are conducive to supporting the dying person's mindfulness. The assisting person should have compassion, patience, and a gentle demeanor, embodying the compassionate and altruistic spirit of Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. To achieve effective recitation assistance for rebirth, we must consider 3 important factors. 1. The assisting person. 2. The dying person. 3. The family members. The assisting person. The assisting person plays a crucial role and should understand the process thoroughly. Here are key points to remember. 1. Advise and arrange everything necessary with the family. Avoid causing disruptions or crying, especially at this critical time. Those who cannot control their emotions should step outside. 2. Maintain a gentle and soothing demeanor. Remind the dying person to recite the Buddha's name and recall their good deeds. 3. Focus on recitation without discussing any unrelated matters that might disturb the dying person's mind. 4. Depending on the situation, recite in a way that the dying person can hear clearly. It's best to recite just loud enough for them to hear, without being too loud or too soft. Recite the full name, Namo Amitabha Buddha, slowly and clearly. 5. Ensure continuous recitation by taking turns. Encourage family members to join in the recitation. Maintain silence in the room, allowing only the sound of the recitation. 6. After the person has stopped breathing, continue recitation without moving the body for at least 2 hours, as the consciousness has not yet fully departed. This is crucial and requires careful attention. 2. The dying person. The dying person is the key figure in this process. If they are a Pure Land practitioner, they should let go of all worldly concerns and focus solely on reciting the Buddha's name. This is the time to concentrate on achieving rebirth in the Pure Land. As the second patriarch of the Pure Land school, Master Shandao advised, when approaching death, do not fear. Consider this body as filthy, bound by many afflictions. If you can let go of this illusory body and be reborn in the Pure Land, you will escape the cycle of suffering and enjoy boundless peace and joy. This is like exchanging old rags for fine clothes. With such thoughts, let go of everything and single-mindedly recite the Buddha's name. Family members. The family plays an essential role in assisting the dying person's rebirth. Here are a few crucial points for them. 1. Show loving respect and avoid any discord. Do not discuss household matters or anything that might disturb the dying person's peace of mind. 2. Follow the guidance of the assisting person. Respect their instructions as they help the dying person. 3. Avoid loud crying or recounting any grievances. Only recite the Buddha's name sincerely. 4. Maintain the recitation and perform good deeds to transfer merit to the deceased for the first 49 days. Friends and relatives should also be mindful of these practices. When visiting a dying friend, focus on recitation and avoid unrelated conversations, as they can disturb the person's mind. By sincerely participating in the recitation, You help the dying person achieve peace and potentially rebirth in the Pure Land. May all beings benefit from these practices and attain peace and happiness. 42. Karma after death. Question: Dear Venerable, after one dies, does karma persist or not? I don't fully understand this issue. Could you kindly explain? Answer: I would like to clarify that after a person dies, karma never ceases to exist. This is except for those who have entirely eradicated mental karma in their current life, which means they have attained enlightenment and see the true nature of karma as inherently non-existent. However, once karmic seeds are sown, they must inevitably bear fruit, even for those who have realized the way. For instance, the Buddha still had to undergo the consequence of being pierced by a splinter and other such incidents, like Patriarch Huike being imprisoned or Muhammad Ghalib being killed by a mob. Nevertheless, when these sages undergo karma, it is different from us. We endure karma with suffering and complaints, whereas they endure it without any pain because they see that the 5 aggregates are all empty. Thus, for them, undergoing karma is like a game with nothing to fear or worry about. This illustrates that once karma is created, it never vanishes. Does this mean karma cannot be transformed? Of course it can be transformed. If it couldn't, why would we practice? Remember, transformation means turning heavy karma into lighter karma. It does not mean that something that exists can become completely non-existent. Thus, karma can never be completely eradicated. I would like to reiterate that although karma never disappears, through diligent practice and repentance, we can transform heavy karmic results into lighter ones. For example, if person A angrily injures person B, naturally person B and their relatives would seek revenge. However, if person A realizes their mistake and sincerely apologizes to person B instead of retaliating, person B might just scold person A heavily instead. This way, person A has transformed their heavy karma into lighter karma. Let's consider another example. Suppose 3 families live on the same street. In these families, Mr. A is a teacher, Mr. B is a doctor, and Mr. C is an engineer. One day, all 3 houses burn down and all their possessions are destroyed, but the people survive. Although their material possessions are lost, their professions remain. Mr. A continues teaching, Mr. B continues practicing medicine, and Mr. C continues engineering. This demonstrates that while tangible items can be destroyed, intangible professions cannot be. Similarly, after we die, the karma we have created never vanishes but follows us like a shadow. For those practicing Pure Land Buddhism, rebirth in the Pure Land is possible because karma persists, which is why it's termed rebirth and not non-birth. Therefore, cause and effect are inextricable. Now let's delve into a more nuanced point. If you read or hear Master Yongzha Xuanjui's Song of Enlightenment, where he states, "In one instant of thought, karma of eons of hell is destroyed," you might be confused or think it's contradictory. Remember, Master Xuanjui is speaking from the standpoint of the highest teachings, which belong to the Ultimate Meaning Sutras. People often overlook the context where he mentions witnessing the true nature of no person and no dharma. For those who realize the true nature, the ultimate truth, what significance does karma hold? At this stage, these individuals live entirely within the absolute truth and clearly see no person and no dharma. Therefore, there is no concept of karma or non-karma. This is the ultimate vision beyond duality of those who have realized the way. For such enlightened beings, karma does not exist, but this does not mean that hell does not exist for the unenlightened. To summarize, knowing that karmic results do not disappear encourages Buddhists to practice diligently, accumulating good deeds to ensure a favorable rebirth. If karma could be lost, why would anyone strive to do good? Those who do not believe in karmic retribution can bring great harm to themselves and society, continually creating negative karma, leading to endless suffering. This is truly lamentable. 43. Issue of age and fate in marriage. Question: Dear Venerable, I observe that many Buddhist families have high educational backgrounds and good economic conditions, yet their families lack happiness. The husband and wife often quarrel and argue. Is this due to incompatible ages, or is it because of fate and predetermined karma that they must endure such retribution? Please explain the situation clearly. Answer: This situation is quite common among many families, to varying extents. The happiness of a marriage cannot be entirely based on education, nor can it be attributed solely to age or material wealth. Believing so is insufficient to build a happy family. High education and sufficient economic conditions are just a few among many other necessary factors for a successful marital life. According to Buddhism, achieving happiness requires the right conditions. Discussing conditions, we must consider both primary and supportive conditions. For example, understanding and loving are primary conditions, while other factors serve as supportive conditions. It is important to clarify Buddhism's stance. Buddhism emphasizes the principle of cause and effect, karma, and never encourages Buddhists to believe in superstitions, such as fortune-telling, examining age compatibility, or determining auspicious times to judge past, present, or future fortunes. Buddhism encourages Buddhists to deeply believe in the cause and effect of karma, aiming to identify the root causes of negative karma and find ways to overcome and transform them into positive karma, thereby improving our lives. Thus, according to Buddhism, marital discord is not due to incompatible ages, but rather to the ingrained habits and karmic seeds each person has accumulated in different living environments, often referred to as incompatible personalities. When we talk about incompatible personalities, we need to understand why this happens. If age were the reason, conflicts would be constant from the beginning to the end, not fluctuating between harmony and discord depending on moods and situations. Before becoming husband and wife, each person had a different background and lifestyle. They might have some common interests, such as educational level or hobbies, which bring them together initially. However, this initial attraction often hides each other's flaws. Once they live together, their individual karmic tendencies and personalities become more apparent, leading to conflicts. The root cause of these conflicts is often not explored because each person hides their flaws, and due to ego and pride, blames external factors like age or destiny rather than reflecting on their own faults. Buddhism, with its insight, does not support this kind of blame shifting. No one can completely align with our expectations. Even we sometimes do not meet our own expectations. Thus, it is not due to incompatible ages, but other factors. The key is to find out the root cause of the disharmony. Usually we fall into the trap of subjectivity, a result of self-attachment. This self-attachment makes us believe we are always right and others are always wrong. Buddhism teaches that life is shaped by karma, and that karma influences our lives. For example, someone with a temper will easily become angry and upset others. This anger is a habitual tendency formed through constant reinforcement, though its nature is fundamentally empty. Hence, when we encounter unfavorable conditions, we get angry, and when conditions are favorable, we are calm. This shows that our anger is not real, but significantly impacts our lives. Marital happiness often breaks down due to one or both partners losing their temper. To overcome these tendencies, Buddhists must continuously practice to transform their minds. Transforming negative seeds into positive ones requires wisdom. Wisdom or mindfulness is essential in life. With wisdom or timely mindfulness, negative consequences can be avoided. When conflicts arise, we should find the root cause instead of blaming others. Why do we lose our temper and cause disharmony? Is it due to age or our temperament, or something else we fail to recognize? When two people disagree, they should calmly sit down to understand the root cause in a spirit of reconciliation. Only through understanding and sympathy can conflicts be resolved, leading to mutual respect and love. Life is a series of creating and experiencing karma. While past karma plays a role, current actions significantly influence outcomes. Understanding karma requires looking at it over time, and current actions are crucial in shaping our present and future. In conclusion, achieving family happiness requires sensitive handling of many issues. Each person needs a keen understanding through wisdom to interact harmoniously. Living together inevitably involves differing personalities. To reconcile these differences, a bridge of understanding and love is necessary. Without understanding and love, mutual respect and compromise are impossible, making harmony difficult to achieve. Through understanding and love, mutual respect and empathy grow, leading to a more harmonious and happy life. Only then can Buddhists hope to build a stable and happy family, enabling them to enjoy the temporary joys of life in a world full of suffering and challenges. 44. The benefits and drawbacks of organ donation. Question. Venerable, organ donation is a very noble act, but as ordinary people, what are the benefits and drawbacks of this act? According to the teachings of our masters, after death, the consciousness has not yet left the body and may become angry if the body is disturbed. Please clarify how this act can be carried out properly. Answer. Organ donation after death is a noble act that depends on the vow of the individual. This beautiful gesture is not something everyone can do. It is a vast act of generosity by a bodhisattva. Generosity involves internal and external offerings. External offerings are items outside of oneself, like money and material possessions. Internal offerings are parts of one's own body, such as donating blood or any other healthy organ. Regarding the benefits, after death, whether one is buried or cremated, the body eventually decays. Instead of allowing the body to decay uselessly, one can choose to donate healthy organs for medical research and treatment, helping others in need. This act is greatly beneficial to humanity. It is a large vow of a bodhisattva, demonstrating selflessness both in life and after death by donating organs to save lives. If the donation is voluntary, there is no anger or harm. The harm occurs only if the body is tampered with without the person's consent, causing the consciousness to become angry, leading to negative consequences. When there is a vow, there is no anger, as others are fulfilling the person's wishes. Not only is there no harm, but there is a significant practical benefit for the living, as lives are saved. Ordinary people, due to their ignorance and strong attachment to the self, often think only of their own benefit, both in life and after death. They may want their body preserved and not donate anything, which shows selfishness. Such people do not contribute positively to society. In contrast, those who disregard the self and benefit others, both in life and after death, are rare and admirable. However, individuals planning to donate organs should clearly explain their wishes to their family to avoid any objections after death. The family should also inform the monks and nuns during the final rites so they can remind the dying person of their noble vow and assist medical staff in the organ retrieval process. In summary, organ donation involves making a vow. When there is a vow, there is no anger because others are following the individual's wishes. This act brings benefits and no harm. 45. Actions of the father and the consequences for the children. Question. Venerable, I often hear the saying, when the father eats salty, the children get thirsty. I don't fully understand the meaning of this saying. Does it contradict the law of karma? Please explain this to me. Answer. At first glance, this saying might seem to contradict the law of karma, which teaches that each person is responsible for their own actions and their consequences. According to the law of karma, if one person eats, another doesn't feel full, and if one person drinks, another doesn't quench their thirst. Each person must bear the results of their actions independently. So why does this saying imply that the children suffer for the actions of the father? This saying, in my understanding, reflects the interconnectedness and influence within family life. Living together in a family, beyond individual karma, there is also shared or collective karma. If there were no collective karma, there would be no deep bonds or relationships such as those between parents and children or spouses. These relationships are often intertwined with past affinities and debts. When speaking of collective karma, there is inevitably an influence on each other. According to individual karma, each person bears the consequences of their actions. For instance, if a father commits a crime, he alone is punished by the law. However, from the perspective of collective karma, the father's actions significantly affect the entire family. This influence can manifest in various ways, such as economic hardship, educational setbacks for the children, and negative impacts on the family's social standing and mental well-being. We can see this clearly in the period after 1975, when many children of former officers faced difficulties in education due to their family background. This is a clear example of how a father's actions affect his family. This is a shared burden the family must bear, even though the father alone is punished by the law. Thus, individual actions, whether good or bad, within a family or any group, have a communal impact. This is why we have sayings like, one good turn deserves another, or conversely, one bad turn tarnishes the whole group, and one rotten apple spoils the barrel. There are countless other sayings that highlight this principle. If parents live immorally, it is easy for their children to follow a similar path. For example, if a father is often drunk and a mother frequently gambles, and they constantly quarrel, there will be no happiness in the family. Children growing up in such an environment are unlikely to thrive. They are influenced by their parents' lack of morality, and consequently, they may adopt similar behavior. This scenario is all too common in society. Of course, there are exceptions. Sometimes good can come from a bad situation. There are families where parents may lack morals or education, but their children grow up to be well-behaved and successful. These exceptions, however, are rare. Generally, the influence of collective karma is significant. In summary, the saying, "When the father eats salty, the children get thirsty," does not contradict the law of karma. The law of karma must be considered from multiple perspectives. It is not a one-dimensional concept. Karma interacts over time, and the influence between individual and collective karma is naturally present. The actions of the father, whether good or bad, inevitably affect the children. If the father is virtuous, kind, and educated, his children are likely to benefit from this influence. Conversely, if the father is immoral and indulgent in vices, it will significantly impact the children's character and life. This is the corresponding cause and effect influenced by collective karma.